In a world drowning in noise, where truth is often buried beneath layers of propaganda and misinformation, there's a need for a different kind of a network of creators that cuts through the clutter, that doesn't shy away from tough topics, and that delivers the unfiltered truth. We are Trim Radio Network. We are creators, we are innovators, we are investigators. We're the ones who aren't afraid to call a spade a spade. If you're ready to participate in thought-provoking discussions, informational topics, and of course today's biggest headlines, subscribe to our YouTube channel today. We're Trim Radio Network. We're cutting the bull and serving the truth.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Now, from the northeast quadrant of the United States, it's the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscalla. Saturday nights from 9 p.m. Eastern until midnight on the Trim Radio Network. You can join the conversation in any of our chat rooms. And now, without further ado, your host, Riscalla.
Hello and welcome, everyone. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. And if I can figure out what happened here. Why does this stuff... Oh, and now no camera. Holy smokes. All right. We'll get it working here in a moment. It truly does amaze me. I do dry runs before I do the show. And just to make sure volumes are set and everything's just working okay. And everything seems fine. Then I go live and it is what it is. I'll check and see what happened to the camera here in a minute. In the meantime, lots of stuff happening. 3I Atlas, supposedly at its closest point yesterday. I kept looking. I didn't see any clear pictures of this thing. I don't understand. If we can get pictures of Saturn and the rings of Saturn, why can't we get a clear picture of this thing? It's supposed to be, I don't know, I think the last count was 175 million miles away. Saturn isn't that far away. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy how we can get close-up pictures of Mars and Saturn and some of the other planets that surround us. But we can't get a close-up picture of our own moon. You ever notice that? We can't get, like they do with other planets. Must be a reason, right? So anyway, 3I Atlas has come and now supposedly, allegedly on its way back out. What I want to know is, how do they know how old this thing is? Oh, this is older than our solar system. This has been long before humans were on the planet. How do you know that? Were you around back then? It's I don't know. Some of the stuff that they come up with, it just it knocks my socks off, and I can't help but wonder who told you that. It's crazy. So anyway, with this thing coming in and lots of crazy stuff happening from this thing, they're saying that this light's coming from it, and they're different colors, and it got bright, then it got dim. and just all kinds of stuff. So anyway, in a little bit here, I'm going to be playing you a video, a very important video um, about vaccines. I have spoken about vaccines many times, caught hell for it. I'll probably catch hell for it tonight because I think we're on YouTube, so we'll probably catch hell for it again tonight. Had one of my my previous channels on YouTube deleted. They just completely deleted everything. And it was because I was talking about what we're going to be talking about tonight. This is so important to me because I have children, I have grandchildren, and I believe one of my children, at least one, has been damaged by these things. We did, as parents, feeling it was our responsibility and our duty to see to it that the children were properly taken care of, that their health was looked after, and whatever the doctor said is what's what we would do, right? I mean, most people, maybe not now, but there was a time when what the doctor said was basically written in stone. You didn't question what the doctor said, generally speaking, and you just, okay, it's time for their well-being vaccine, whatever they call it. They have so many of them. And it's interesting that when I went to school, ADHD, ADD, the majority of stuff that children are suffering from today did not exist. Did not exist. Didn't have all of the allergies that we hear about. I'm not saying it was zero. I'm saying it was nothing like it is today. Nothing. And the total amount I think that we were required to get was 3. Go on a search engine and check and see how many they want to give kids today. If I'm not mistaken, it's I want to say 70. I don't know if it's that many over their lifetime, but I think it's 70. And I think it's 35 or 32 prior to teenage. Gosh. It's disturbing how quickly people will go along with this. And then in some cases, I don't want to say rare, but maybe rare could be a better description, where the injection is given and a violent reaction occurs almost immediately. The majority of the time, it's exactly that. It takes time. And it is that time, that division between the time that it was originally given to the time now when something happens and some kind of issue comes up, and people don't put the 2 and 2 together. It's by design. This is what they want. This is how they've gotten away with it for so long. And now more and more is coming out. More information. I believe it was not, I may not, I don't figure out how to say it. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, the CDC came out just recently, within the last days, maybe 5-6 days, indicating that the big C-19, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it's, can't remember the word that they used. It basically wasn't any good. I can't remember the wording that they used, but basically that's what they said. It's no value. I can't remember the exact words that they used, but that's basically what they said. It's no value. So we're going to, if you want to get it, that's fine, but no mandates. And I can't tell you how much grief I caught over the years when I first started speaking about the dangers involved I wonder how many people know that with the C-19, that the insert sheet was blank. Blank. There was no writing. Excuse me, there was a little bit of writing that said left blank on purpose. Blank. Now, normally in an insert sheet, it tells you a wide variety of information. And one of the things that it shows is the degree of after effects or negative issues about that during the tests. Well, they couldn't put that because the tests were cut short due to the majority of the animals they were testing dying. 50% died. That hospitals were being paid to kill people. I was reporting this back in 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now. I was reporting that hospitals were being paid when people died at the hospital from, quote, COVID. Some of these hospitals were paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. Where is the incentive to keep these people alive? How much you want to bet that if the word went out, instead of, okay, if John Smith dies in your hospital of COVID, we'll pay you $150,000. Instead of that, how about if John Smith survives COVID in your hospital, we'll pay you $150,000. How much you want to bet? I bet you a dime to a dollar. You bet one dime, I'll bet you $1. That the figures would have been completely different, totally different. I saw one hospital, I can't remember which one it was, and I don't recall what state it was in, $350,000 per patient. What incentive is there? The incentive is, all right, we got to do this. This is the protocol. They come in and they're not feeling well for whatever reason, so we put them on our protocol. The protocol is they get injected with some goobly goo, and that doesn't respond. Then we put them on a respirator, and we give them the remdesivir, whatever it's called, remdesivir, and then they die. Remdesivir did not pass the safety protocols. Remdesivir had such a high death rate that they had to stop the testing of remdesivir. Yet this was part of the protocol that these hospitals were told to follow. And the end result was literally, it could, think of it this way. Let's just say it's 100,000, which I know in some cases was far more than that, but let's just say it's 100. For every 10 patients that you get is $1 million. For every 10. And that's only if it's 100,000. Think of how much money is going to these hospitals when all of this was going down. $1 million for 10. How many do you think died in their hospitals? It wasn't 10. My God, it was hundreds. At a minimum of 100 a pop. You're talking big dollars, and you're talking an incentive to see to it that the hospital gets their money. And the best way for the hospital to get their money is to see that this person does not live. And then we'll just classify it as a COVID death. There were reports of people who had been shot coming into the hospital and dying, and they reported them as a COVID death. People who had come in with head trauma from an auto accident, coming in on an ambulance, and they test them with a stupid ass test that they had, which would test positive for a freaking pineapple. Oh yeah, they're coming up positive. Give them the protocol. no incentive to see to it that people were treated the best that they could be. Every incentive to see to it that people passed away as quickly as possible so we could move on to the next one. 100,000 a pop. Every 10 is a million. Shameful. It is absolutely shameful and disgusting. And whoever set it all up should be in prison. Whoever set these protocols in place, knowing that remdesivir had an extremely high death rate, whoever that was. Which brings me to another subject. I'm going to play this video shortly. I've been saying on a couple of my shows now, I'm not really overall not very well pleased with what's happening in this administration. One of the things that has really bothered me is the idea that they're going to take over Gaza. You see, I go back to a time when I can remember before my family moved back to this country. My dad was born in Boston, was living in Egypt at the time. And things got really bad for us, for him, politically at the time, and we had to leave. But I can remember just down the hall from us was a Jewish lady that my mom had dear friends with this Jewish lady. Downstairs, so in Egypt, there are no houses. Everything is high rises. So downstairs from us was a Muslim family. And you never heard anybody arguing with, I mean, maybe over a stupid little thing, but seriously, serious arguments didn't happen. We all knew that we were all just equal. Nobody was better than the other. Nobody wanted to convert the other to whatever. They just wanted to live their lives in peace. There was a time when the land that we call Israel was called Palestine. They want you to believe that was never true. That's an absolute lie. It was called Palestine. And Israel was formed by a very wealthy family, along with the UK, the Saudis, and America, all joining together and claiming that because there was such an outpouring of compassion to the Jewish people, finding out about what happened during this Holocaust and all of these innocent people being put to death, the word was there were a people without a country. They needed a country. They needed a ground that they could call their own. And so they formed this agreement. I can't remember which one it was. I think it's the Balfour Agreement, but I may be mistaken about it. And the agreement was, we're going to take land from the Palestinians. They wrote it in the agreement. We're going to take land from the Palestinians and we're going to give it to the Jewish people. Well, there were already Jewish people living there. There were Jewish people living there. There were Muslim people living there. There were Christian people living there. There were all three different major denominations already living there. And there wasn't anything like what you're seeing today. Nothing. Not one fraction. 1/1,000,000th of what you're seeing today. And gradually the land that was given to the Jewish people continued to expand more and more and more, to the point that the Palestinian people, who at one time were 100% of the land, and then when the Jewish state was formed, I believe they reduced that to around 70% of the land. And then from that time forward now, they don't even have 1 or 2% of the land anymore. And there is outright genocide happening. And one of the reasons I mentioned earlier that I'm not happy with this administration is that we continue to fund Israel. Why are we funding someone who is openly committing genocide? Beside the fact, what do they need our money for? Are they not self-sustaining? They have literally sucked us dry since the time that they came into play. I think it's time that we stop. I don't want to give anybody, for that matter, any more of our tax dollars until our lives here in the contiguous, or not better than in the entire United States, until our lives become better. It's ridiculous as we give out billions of dollars knowing that there are homeless people. There are people who are severely addicted to drugs that need help, but they can't get it because of a screwed up system that keeps them in that position because they can make more money off of them that way. The time, I think, is absolutely vital to us now that people start seeing that the government is really not in service to us. It's not in. It's not working in the way that it was intended to work. It's supposed to serve the people. They are requiring us to serve them. So that's one of the areas I'm not very happy about with this administration, is that they're continuing to support Israel while Israel commits war crimes. Another thing that I'm not very pleased about is that we continue to fund Ukraine. We know without question that Ukraine is absolutely corrupt. The man who calls himself president of Ukraine bought his parents a multi-million-dollar villa in Florida. And more than likely that money came from us. And yet we continue to give them money. We continue to, what's the word I'm looking for? Hide and not be transparent. This is one of the things that I was looking forward to, transparency. Well, transparency doesn't seem to be happening. We're going through an entire political war to get the Epstein files out. And one of my friends said, somebody has accused Trump of rape when they were 16 years old, or they were a teenager, they were underage. I don't recall exactly the age. I think it was 16. And sued Trump for, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 million, whatever that was. And my answer to that is, if he is guilty, first of all, and if he has paid the price and they were willing to settle for that, then that's over and done with. However, if he is guilty like one of these Epstein things, where it was an ongoing and continuous, he should have to face the fire like anybody else. He may be one of the best presidents we've ever had, but if big IF, capital IF, if he was involved in any of that stuff recently, then I think that he should have to face the fire for that. Everybody else is. What I see is that there was a time when he was a playboy, basically, and he was attracted to younger women. That's a common thing. I'm not justifying any of this. I'm just telling you what I know from my life's experience, where I had a friend of mine who, he was in his 60s. He loved to go out with women that were 20s and 30s. It's not for me, but that was for him. So I'm sure that being a multimillionaire at the time, maybe even close to being a billionaire at the time, I don't know, he's around all these beautiful women. So yeah, you're going to have all kinds of pictures with him around all these beautiful women, and you can make all kinds of suggestions, but the facts remain that I don't see people coming forward like people were on the women on the Epstein list. They had every opportunity to say whatever they wanted to say. Nobody said anything about Trump. So if you think it's just because Trump doesn't want to release it because he's in it, I know he's in it. A lot of people who follow what's going on know he's in it, but that doesn't mean he's guilty of what the other people were doing. So we've gone through a political war to get that released. According to my sources, it's being released. We'll see. Another thing that I'm not really very pleased with is this idea that we're going to I can't figure out how to say it. He wants to increase the value of our money, and we continue to hear that the inflation is lower, the inflation is down, prices are down. Unemployment, unfortunately for him, unemployment is going up, but he blames that on all of the firings, all of the thinning out of hundreds of, I think it was a little over 100,000 different jobs in the federal government. So that knocked that up. But then they're claiming that, prices are down. I don't see prices down. Now, let me back up a moment. I don't see any significant changes in pricing. The one thing that sticks out in my mind are eggs. And if I'm not mistaken, it was the person who was in charge of all that at the federal level was forcing egg manufacturers to destroy their eggs for some stupid reason. I don't remember what it was. So it caused the pricing of eggs to go up. At one point, where I'm at, a dozen eggs had gotten up to $5.99. They're back down to $1.99. Before all this insanity started, it was around $1.80. So that's the one thing that's coming close. Fuel, for the longest time, just recently began to come down a little bit, but fuel is still very expensive. I still see fuel at upwards of almost $3 a gallon in some places. There's no need for that. As we continue the war in Ukraine, he sent out word to Nigeria. You people don't get your act together, we're coming in. I mean, I feel compassion for it. Why is it that he's willing to go into Nigeria? Because Christians are being slaughtered, but he's not willing to go into Gaza and say, stop. That doesn't add up for me. I don't want to take anything away from the guy. I will tell you that without a question in my mind, he's far and above any of the little boogers that we've had in the past. Because they've all been criminals, all of them, one way or another. Even all the way back to, people look at JFK. He was a great president. Yes, he was a great president. He also had some serious problems on the side that people, really didn't know about, generally speaking, at the time. We do now. He had affairs, all kinds of things happening in the background. So the only ones that are trying to help this country are the ones that they do away with. As bad as it was with some of these presidents, the ones who really did try in their own way, JFK wanted to do away with the CIA. He wanted to do away with the IRS. He wanted to do away with the Federal Reserve. When you start biting into that apple, it's a pretty dangerous apple to bite into. And unfortunately, it's loaded with mines. So you take a bite and it'll blow up in your face. So I've heard from this administration that they're going after the IRS, that they're going to stop the IRS. It's not going to be the Internal Revenue Service. It's going to be the External Revenue Service. Well, in my readings and in my research, I came to find out, and I don't ask anybody to believe what I'm saying. You go look it up and find it for yourself. What I found was, now I haven't looked at one of the tax forms recently. Everything was done for me through my accountant, and they had my signature on file. But if I'm not mistaken, it says, please sign here. It doesn't say sign here. It says, please sign here. Well, I went to start reading about this please sign here to find out that it is, when it was introduced, first of all, it was unconstitutional. Even though it passed, it was voluntary. It was a voluntary tax. And if it is a voluntary tax, why is it that they'll put you in jail? They'll take all of your money from you. They will shut your business down if you don't pay the tax, if it's all voluntary. That the tax was intended for those who were in commercial businesses and the federal government. That the rest of us was voluntary. So I've heard that he's going to do away with the IRS. I hope that's true. Now we need to do away with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is no part of our government. The Federal Reserve was formed again unconstitutionally. The Federal Reserve is a central bank that is run by a private organization. Many people think that the Federal Reserve is where is part of our government. No, it's not part of our government. And through the years, audits that have been proposed have been either completely turned down or allowed partially. There's never been a full audit of the Federal Reserve. And you know why? Because they don't have to answer to anybody. They're a private bank. It's like a private business. You running your private business, the worst thing that can happen for you is that the IRS comes in and begins to look through your taxes and just finds little nitpicky things to bother you with and continue to harass you for money. Well, who's going to harass the Federal Reserve? The IRS? The IRS is the Federal Reserve's tax collection agency. That's who they work for. The IRS is a corporation that was formed in the Philippines. The Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank. We need to go back to the Treasury. That's the responsibility of our Treasury, is to take care of our money. It's very, I try to describe this without using colorful language because I don't think it's professional, but it is disturbing to me to see how they have stolen money from us because I have lived it. I have watched it. I have experienced it. You know, I give this analogy many times, and I don't know if people really get it or not. One of the chores I had as a teenager around the house was to cut the yard, cut the grass. And after I'd cut the grass, my dad would give me a silver dollar. I liked silver dollars because they were the largest of the coins that we had, and they were heavy. For a kid, it was without question the heaviest coin that we had. I'd take them and I'd shine them up really shiny, and I'd put them in my drawer and save them. Well, I had cut the grass one weekend. My dad came home and he said, "I'm sorry, I forgot to go by the bank and pick up some silver dollars. Here's 2 paper dollars." I didn't want the paper dollars. I wanted a silver dollar. He said, "Take these after school Monday. Take them to the bank, which was down the street from us, and tell the lady you want 2 silver dollars. She'll give you 2 silver dollars." I took them to the bank. I got my silver dollars. Those silver dollars today, those same silver dollars, if you were to melt them down just for the silver, are a minimum of $35. Minimum. So that $1 is now worth 35 of our dollars. So how hard are you scraping the bottom of the barrel financially to get by? Today's families, both people have to work and there's still not enough money. Imagine making 35 times more than whatever you're making now. How would that change your life? Because that's what's happened. Over the years, they have stolen over 35 times what our dollar is worth. And the result is us suffering. As if it didn't stop there. Then the money that they force us to pay, although it's supposed to be voluntary, they give to other people who don't even belong here. They give them more than the people who have paid into the system. There's something very wrong. Something very, very wrong. Now, I understand this administration is trying to do away with all of that. But for how long? How long has this been going on? Why isn't it that previous administrations allowed this to go on? And with that understanding, how is it that the people who are responsible for bringing in millions of people into this country and paying them, some of them upwards of $10,000 a month, how is it that none of them are in any trouble? None. I haven't heard a peep. Why is a person like Hillary Clinton still walking free when there is indisputable evidence that she has committed treason? Why is Joe Biden still walking free? And I've heard it all, guys. Oh, yeah, he was hung, he died, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, whoever's playing that part, they should accept the guilt because they played the part. Why are they walking free? Why is his son walking free? Why are some of these people that have openly committed treason against us, still walking free? I don't see big names being arrested. They got one guy, Whoopi, one guy out of, how many is it? Probably almost 1,000. One guy. Dan Bongino decided he'd had enough. From what I understand, I think he realized before even going into this that he could only take it for so long. Because if I have my information correctly, when he went into this, he told him come January, when he went in at the beginning, come the next January, I'm leaving. I think he realized going into it what a mess this was and what little he can do as hard as he tried. That's frustrating to be given a position. You are the manager of this company, and every move that you make is micromanaged by somebody else saying, no, don't do that. Do it this way. Do it that way. Do it the other way. Yeah, that would frustrate the snot out of me because I had to experience that at one time. I ran a multi-billion, probably almost $1 billion, 100,000 square foot warehouse I was responsible for. We had God knows how many millions of dollars of food in this warehouse we were responsible for. We had stockpiles of food for restaurants in this warehouse. Restaurants all over the Miami area. We were the only receiving location for Gallo wine at the time. All of the Gallo wine that was brought into Miami was brought into the warehouse that I was responsible for. And I would do things that I knew worked, but yet I had a general manager over me that would come and say, don't do that. What are you talking about? Don't do it. This is all part of what we should be doing. No, don't do that. It was very frustrating. I only made it just a little over a year and I couldn't take it anymore. Just couldn't take it anymore. Either you tell me that this is my responsibility, this is what I'm allowed to do, this is what I'm not allowed to do in the beginning. Otherwise, you give me a position as a manager and part of my duties as a manager that I'm fulfilling, you don't like and you want me to do something else. It doesn't set well. And for somebody like, from what I understand about Dan Bongino, he likes it by the book. He likes it done and without any messing around, get it over with. And I think he just was bounced from one thing to another. I've heard rumblings of him and Bondi getting into an argument, a serious argument, probably over the lack of prosecution, because he sees these people. He had said on his show before he got involved in all of this, he knows that these people are criminals. And yet nobody. Adam Schiff is probably one that stands out above all of them. Why is this man still walking free? How is it that somebody who has done what he has done repeatedly is still walking around free? I have, what is his name? Homer. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's Homer, Thomas Homer. The last name is Homer. I'm not sure about the first name. I may be confusing him with the guy in charge of the border. I think his name is Homer. Said we have indisputable evidence. He said this on the record. We have indisputable evidence. That means they have evidence that there is no question, if, ands, or buts. It is absolutely written in concrete. We have the hard evidence in hand that the Biden family took millions of dollars from the Communist Party of China. You can't do that while you're in office, first of all. Second of all, is that not treason? What would you call it? Well, no, let me put it to you this way. One of the definitions of treason is to aid and abet your enemy, to help your enemy against the United States. So what happened in Afghanistan when we left? And we left billions of dollars of dollars of equipment behind. New helicopters, tanks, all kinds of stuff. Is that not aiding and abetting our enemies? Do you think that they're going to, those that was left behind, they're going, the Taliban is going to take that and go, oh, thank you. Now we're going to go fight our other enemies. We're not going to worry about you guys. Right. It's going to be sold on the black market. It'll be used against us. I don't see anybody going to jail over that. There was clear evidence without question. I don't know how hard the evidence was, but from what I read at the time, there was hard evidence that Hillary Clinton had sold uranium to the Russians, had given them the rights to mine uranium and sold a bunch of it to them. Don't see anybody going to jail. So there's a few other things that's going on, and I think you get the idea. I'm grateful, but look at what we had to choose from in the last election. We had without question, a setup. There was no election for the people to choose who they wanted to run as president on the Democratic side, on the Democrat side, excuse me. They just assigned somebody. And we know, those of us who are paying attention know darn well if that person had gotten into office, it would have been 10 times what we had experienced the previous 4 years. So we were left with either that or vote for someone who claims, at least on the surface, that he loves this country, that he wants what's best for this country, and that he's willing to do whatever is necessary to make that happen. Those were our choices. Now, sadly, I understand that there are many different responsibilities when you're sitting in this position, allegedly the most powerful position on the face of our planet. But I have a difficult time understanding how you say America first, but it's not. America is not first. While we're continuing to involve ourselves with Ukraine, while we continue to involve ourselves with Israel, while we claim to Nigeria, you better stop what you're doing or we're coming in. While we're getting ready to do pretty much war, I mean all-out war in Venezuela, I'm not happy about any of that. And I'm sure that I only have a fraction, a very small fraction of the information of why all of that is happening. I can only tell you that when all of this was going down and as the elections were happening, I didn't expect this. And I know that he's constantly fighting people in the back where we have, they say Republicans and Democrats. It's crap. It's all crap. The right wing, the left wing, the same frickin' bird. The sad part is there's not enough of them up there that want to see this country move forward. That's the sad truth. And it doesn't matter who the president is because there's so many people that can undermine what he's doing. Look at every turn that this guy makes. They were complaining about the tariffs. Oh my God, tariffs. We're going to do this. They're going to do that. They're going to do the other. Right? Because of all the money that we made on the tariffs, he's willing to give the military a bonus. Didn't come from our tax dollars. It came from outside the country. So I'm happy with stuff like that. But like I said earlier, there's other things that are happening I'm not too pleased with. I'm not really pleased with. All right, let me bring this up. This is Dale Bigtree, if you are familiar with the name. This is Dale Bigtree, and he is doing a documentary. And this is fact-based. There is no theory involved in any of this. This is fact-based. And it's all about vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And the difference between the two is alarming. And the true doctors, the doctors that truly take the oath to do no harm, those doctors are becoming more and more outspoken about what is going on and how unnecessary what these things are, and what a gold mine this is. Can you imagine having a business that you have so much influence with the government that you say, hey, government, listen, my whatever it is that my fidgets, I'm going to give you the wording, because this is what happened. This is real life. I'm going to give you the wording. I'm the manufacturer of the widget. I'm going to call it a widget. I'm the manufacturer of the widget, and I'm going to give you the writing that you're going to write into law that my widget absolutely mandatorily has to be given to every whatever, child, whatever. And then you get that to pass. You don't have to do anything. Just sit back and collect the profits. And that's what we have with these things. All right. While I'm playing the video, I'll see if I can figure out what happened to my camera. See if I can get this up here. We're going to do this. See if we can get it. All right.
Hi, I'm Del Bigtree, executive producer of An Inconvenient Study and founder and CEO of Informed Consent Action Network. I Can. What you're about to see is one of the most important stories I've ever told. It's a story.
All right, give me a second. I had another problem. Doggone it. Don't know why I did that. That was crazy. Go back and see if I can find it again here. Come on. Right.
Hi, I'm Del Bigtree, executive producer of An Inconvenient Study.
Okay, now I just got to get it to where you guys can see it. So let me bring that up.
Study and founder and CEO of Informed Consent Action Network. I Can. What you're about to see is one of the most important stories I've ever told. It's a story of a top infectious disease expert, a study that might have never seen the light of day, and shocking data that could change everything we think we know about childhood health. When the credits roll, I'll be back to share how you can help us deliver an inconvenient study to every corner of the globe. Thank you for being here. And now, I hope you enjoy the film.
Children struggling every day with ADHD?
Scott's allergies made it hard to keep up with his friends.
Allergic reactions from accidental food exposure.
Moderate to severe eczema.
Plaque psoriasis. Rheumatoid arthritis. Food allergies.
Allergies.
Seizure.
Asthma.
Eczema.
IBS.
Lupus.
We are now the sickest country in the world.
The health of American children is in crisis.
A huge rise in chronic conditions in kids 17 and under.
More than 40% of American children now have at least one chronic health condition.
Autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile diabetes, lupus, Crohn's disease, all this IBS.
I had eczema, asthma, all put out. Allergies, stomach issues.
This is to me the one that gets me. Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. Today it's 1 in 31.
ADD, ADHD, speech-delayed language like tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, sleep disorders, ASD, autism.
But there's nowhere in the world that these kind of rapid increases in the incidence of disease could be genetic. Genetic change takes generations, centuries to play out.
What's really causing our kids of this generation to be so chronically sick?
What the heck is happening?
America is the sickest nation in the industrialized world. It is now believed that over 54% of our kids have a chronic disease, either a neurological disorder or an autoimmune disease. That's up from only 12.8% back in the 1980s. In roughly 40 years, we have seen the greatest decline in human health ever recorded. What if I told you there is a study that could shed light on this chronic disease epidemic, but no major medical institution seemed willing to do it? What if I told you there was one scientist brave enough to conduct this study?
How you doing, Mark? Good to see you. Yeah, nice to see you. Absolutely.
What if I told you that when the study was finished, that scientist was too afraid to publish it? What would you do? Maybe you would do what I did. I got hidden cameras and recording equipment, and I went to ask him why.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Cool. You all dined with us before?
I want to show you a video.
Okay.
Curious of what your reaction to this.
Okay. Just hit play here.
Yeah. And then press play there.
What was the most shocking thing? Because I mean, I know what I've seen.
No, I thought it was important. It's important information because of it did show a difference between the groups.
We have some serious issues.
I actually agree with that.
If I can't get this study out, then what hope is there for every kid in the future?
I don't want to say it's not the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do, but I just don't want to.
I mean, obviously, really emotional.
Sick. It's really sick.
Publishing something like that, might as well retire. I'd be finished.
So who was that guy? Zervo's probably going to lose his job over this.
You know, I'm thinking before we get into the hidden cameras and the study and Dr. Zervos and all that, why don't we just take it all the way back to how this actually started? I've been a medical journalist for almost 20 years now. My first 10 years was at CBS, and the last 8 years or so, I've had my internet news show called The High Wire. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. But the biggest change in my career happened when I produced a documentary about vaccinations called Vaxxed. And at the center of that documentary was a whistleblower from the CDC named Dr. William Thompson. He came forward in 2015 and said that they were committing scientific fraud on the vaccine safety studies. Well, that film blew up and became a worldwide sensation, mostly because we got so much bad press, starting with being kicked out of the Tribeca Film Festival.
The decision to run a controversial documentary about vaccines has Robert De Niro at the center of a big screen backlash.
Tonight, the film festival Robert De Niro started Under Fire, a controversial new film that many are characterizing as anti-vaccine.
I think the movie is something that people should see. There was a backlash which I haven't fully explored. I want to know the truth, and I'm not anti-vaccine. I want safe vaccines.
Vax producer Del Bigtree says canceling the screening amounts to a suppression of the truth.
I can't imagine what type of pressure came down that would make them pull a movie that they were obviously behind in the beginning.
The message from the medical community is clear.
This is one of those scientific questions that where science has provided an answer.
Vaxxed ended up being one of the most controversial documentaries in history. And because of that, there were lines down the block everywhere we went.
Look at this crowd behind me. Look at this line goes on and on and on.
In fact, the very first day we screened at Angelica Film Center in New York, I wanted to know why there's this giant line down the block. What are these people here for?
Can every parent or someone, if you have a family member with autism, would you please stand up right now? Like to see.
3/4 of the room stood up. I remember feeling like the air just got sucked out of the room. I had no idea that there was this many people suffering from this issue. I ended up asking that question 3 screenings a day, 5 days a week for an entire year. And every single time, 3/4 of the room stood up. I realized I had stumbled on something absolutely massive.
Hello, everybody. This is Jamie.
Jenny said. Can you guys both tell us your names?
I'm Stephanie.
And this is Zion.
After the screenings, parents of injured children were inspired to tell their own stories. We set up video cameras and started interviewing everybody that wanted to talk. And what I discovered is it wasn't just autism, and it wasn't just the MMR vaccine. There was an ocean of vaccine injury, and nobody was talking about it.
Doctor says, well, do you want the flu vaccine? I was like, might as well do it now.
I gave it and I did polio. They gave her the Hep B vax. She got the 2-month shots.
Yeah, the MMR vaccine.
By 10:30 that morning, she was arching her back, clenching her fists. I didn't think I was going to cry.
That night, we were in the hospital with the 106-degree fever.
He began to projectile vomit. He began to this loud pitch scream.
Like that's when the blood curdling scream started. I did not lay down for 10 months straight because she would vomit and asphyxiate. She would vomit at night and she would lie there while she was asleep and she would choke on it.
When we had that vaccination, he lost all language.
He just stopped talking?
He wasn't talking. He didn't want to nurse.
He went to not talking at all. He was developing really well, except for motor skills.
He's got chronic allergies.
An eczema rash.
Food protein enterolitis syndrome. She couldn't eat anything on the glycemic index that was too high.
GI symptoms. He started to have gut inflammation, chronic snoring, sleep apnea.
Seizure-like activity.
We woke up. She just...
She died in your arms.
Yeah.
I continued to vaccinate her and make her worse and make her sicker.
The guilt and it's so overwhelming. They killed my daughter.
Clearly, this was a bigger issue than anybody realized. But there was one particular interview that we did that really changed my perspective forever.
Colton was a 13-year-old, healthy, strong boy. He loved anything that has to do with an adrenaline rush. Motocross was his passion. The doctor says, hey, he's the age that you should get the HPV vaccine. I said, okay. So he was administered the vaccine. And then this is the last day he got to ride that big boy bike. And that day he came home, he was starting to feel nauseous, really sore neck. He still didn't want to get out of bed. I just thought, man, you're just really weak and exhausted. And that evening, when he sat up to take a drink of water, he just flopped back and his head just hit the pillow. And I went, Colton, are you going paralyzed? They immediately took him down to Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake. Original diagnosis was transverse myelitis. When the doctor came out and asked me, has he been sick? I said, no, he hasn't been sick. He had the HPV vaccine on February 1st. And they went, oh, well, we'll be reporting that to VARS.
It does suck, like, not being able to play sports anymore. Now I have to sit on the sideline, just watch everybody. You gotta do your research, like, you can't just trust a doctor anymore. Do your own ways to find out what's best for you.
Unfortunately, Colton ended up taking his life in 2018 because he believed he'd become too much of a burden on his family. But the thing I remember about standing there and watching that interview taking place, my co-producer, Polly Tommy, was doing the interview, was this box that was hanging on his side that was breathing for him. And it went through a tube that was going through a hole in his throat. And he literally had to wait for it to fill his lungs with air before he could answer a question. So he'd go, and then he would start answering the question until he ran out of air. I thought about all of the people that accuse these so-called anti-vaxxers of bringing back polio or the iron lung.
Once vaccination rates fall, you're going to have a lot of people getting sick and a lot of children paralyzed for the rest of their life with polio.
I thought, he's wearing an iron lung. You're not laying in a metal tube anymore. They've reduced it down to a box that hangs on your side and a hose that goes to your throat. But in this case, he wasn't paralyzed because he had polio. He wasn't paralyzed because he didn't vaccinate. He was paralyzed by the Gardasil HPV vaccine.
I chose to get my daughter vaccinated because I want her to be one less woman affected by cervical cancer.
One less. Start herself.
Then I went home and started looking up all of the inserts, the warning labels that are wrapped around all of the childhood vaccines, and most of them say it right there in serious adverse events. Guillain-Barré syndrome, that's paralysis. Or transverse myelitis, paralysis. And I realized
polio vaccine is a success.
we didn't eradicate paralytic diseases with the vaccine program.
The vaccine works.
We're causing paralytic diseases with our vaccine program. So as we traveled the country, some parents would come up and say, I'm about to have a baby. I'm definitely not going to get the MMR vaccine because your movie shows that one's dangerous. But what about the other 16 vaccines that are given in 72 doses by the time my child's 18? And I'd say, I only have anecdotal evidence from the thousands of interviews I've done that not a single childhood vaccine is safe. But that's not scientific. I wanted something better. I wanted to get to the bottom of this. So I started a nonprofit called the Informed Consent Action Network. Based on the Nuremberg Code's right to voluntary consent, the ethical principle globally agreed upon in the wake of the Nazi doctors' horrifying human experiments, where it states the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential, and there should be no element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, or overreaching or other ulterior form of constraint or coercion. What I wanted to do was investigate the entire vaccine program. I was really focused on one thing. We hear that vaccines are safe. And effective. But before we even worry about if they're effective, how did we determine they're safe? We started looking at all the science around the world, but we hit a big roadblock. You can't sue a manufacturer of a vaccine. It's one of the only products in America that has what they call liability protection. The reason is because of a law that was passed in 1986 by the US government. The pharmaceutical industry basically blackmailed the government. And they said, we are losing so much money from lawsuits for death and injury from our vaccines, we can't make a profit.
Studies have shown that the whooping cough or pertussis vaccine causes brain damage. The controversy isn't really over the fact that it happens, but how often it happens.
And they said, if you want us to continue making vaccines, you're going to have to take on the liability. And our government agreed to that. If you want to sue or you want to get any information outside of what's publicly known, you're going to have to sue the government. And that's when I realized I need a constitutional attorney. And I found a guy named Aaron Siri.
Mr. Siri, you're not a medical doctor, are you?
No, sir.
And you're not an immunologist or biologist or any kind of...
Or vaccinologist, no, but I depose them regularly, including the world's leading ones with regards to vaccines, and I have to make my claims based on actual evidence when I go to court with regards to vaccines. I don't get to rely on titles.
Okay.
He had a genius way forward. We're going to sue the government agencies, HHS, FDA, NIH, and we started winning. And what did we prove in those lawsuits? That the entire science behind vaccine safety was nothing but a complete fraud.
Doctors used to listen to parents. When their parents came in and said, hey, my kid is suffering with this condition, has this issue, doctors listened to them. But when parents started coming in and saying, my kid went in and got a vaccine and then started having X issue, that's when doctors stopped listening.
Hi, how you doing? We have triplets, 2 boys and a girl, Richie, Robbie, and Claire. Every day in our life was a party. Every single day they were smiling and laughing and looking at each other, engaging in each other. On June 25th, 2007, we brought them in for the pneumococcal shot. My daughter still has the mark on her leg from the shot. She was the first one to get it, and she screamed and never really stopped screaming after that. But we continued. We didn't know. We did the boys as well. By noon, Claire shut completely off. It was as if she was blind and deaf, and all she did at that moment was stare at the ceiling fan. So that was at noon. We had the shot at 10 a.m. 2 o'clock, we watched Richie shut off. They lost all their reflexes. I'm an educational audiologist. I actually did the test for the stapedial reflex, which is a little muscle in the middle ear, just to see if a muscle they can't control was still working, and it didn't. The stapedial reflex dampens sound, so your ears don't hurt from a really loud sound, and both of them had no stapedial reflex. They stopped blinking, stopped yawning, stopped coughing, stopped sneezing.
The worst is when we saw the final one shut down. We were told it was genetic, and then we were told by geneticists that there's no possible way 3 children would shut off on the same day. So we had severe autism spectrum disorder for all 3 kids entering kindergarten. We have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to recover them. The only person that we got back is Robbie, the one that was last to shut off. Richie can only say single, maybe 2 words together. Claire is still completely nonverbal, not potty trained, and Robbie is approaching grade level, but severe OCD.
Let me tell you what a day in our life is. So you got, say, a 6 or 7 or 8 year old child who's not potty trained. And at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, they fill their diaper. Well, you assume that's pretty uncomfortable, so they take it off. Pretty soon it's all over them. It's all over the bed. In short order, it's all over me. It's all over her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm snapping at her. She's snapping at me. We're both snapping at the kid, who is the only innocent party in the whole scenario. And the one thing that's conspicuously absent from that scenario is anybody who told you that shot was safe. They're all asleep in their bed. They haven't got a problem in the world.
This one story of Richie, Robbie, and Claire puts an end to any discussion that autism is only caused by genetics. There is no genetic explanation that would turn 3 brothers and sisters off on the exact same day.
What you should do when there are widespread complaints that a product is causing a given harm is you should study it.
Vaccines should be tested like other medicines. They should be safety tested. And unfortunately, vaccines are not safety tested. Of the 72 vaccine doses now mandated, essentially mandated, they're recommended, but they're really mandated for American children, none of them, not one, has ever been subject to a pre-licensing placebo-controlled trial.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. has been torn apart by mainstream media for saying that there's no placebo trials being done for vaccines. But he's right. It's exactly what we found in our lawsuits against the government. Not a single childhood vaccine is going through a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial prior to licensure. That's the gold standard of safety testing for all pharmaceutical products, but is being skipped for vaccines. In case you forgot how a double-blind, placebo-based trial worked as we discussed it back in high school science class, let me remind you. We break up a group of kids into 2 groups. One group is going to get the vaccine. The other group is going to get a placebo, which is a product that has no effect on the human body. When it comes to an injectable like vaccines, that is a saline injection. Then it's called double-blinded because both the scientists and the patients are blinded from knowing which one they got. Did they get the vaccine or did they get the placebo? This is so that the scientists will not manipulate the study in favor of the pharmaceutical industry that will stand to make a lot of money if this vaccine proves to be safe. Then we track these 2 groups for 2 to 5 years, sometimes as long as 10 years for a lot of drugs. And at the end of that study, we unblind both the patient and the scientist. So we look at both groups, the vaccinated and the placebo group, and we compare their health outcomes. Who had more cancer? Who had more diabetes or ADD, ADHD or autism or Tourette's or lupus or multiple sclerosis? All of these things that are currently skyrocketing in the United States of America. And if, when you compare them, they both turn out the same, there's the same amount of issues in the vaccinated group as is in the placebo group, then you know it's safe. You've established what we call a safety baseline. But if the vaccinated group has more issues than the placebo group, then we know it's not safe and it shouldn't be put on the market. Only one problem. Not a single vaccine on the childhood schedule has ever been through a double-blind placebo-based trial. Therefore, They cannot say the vaccines are safe based on science.
Are all vaccine trials placebo controlled?
No, and nor should they be. So, for example, when Prevnar 13, so Prevnar was a conjugate pneumococcal vaccine.
The FDA has approved a new pneumococcal vaccine.
It had to be tested in the phase 3 trial. And so the control group there was Prevnar 7 and had been shown to work.
It will replace Prevnar, which was effective against 7 serotypes.
You can't ask parents to put their children at risk of pneumococcal disease when there existed on the market at the time a vaccine to prevent that. And the World Health Organization has been very clear on this. That would have been considered an ethical trial.
Dr. Paul Offit's one of the big proponents of vaccinations, probably because he's made a vaccine and made a killing off of it, the rotavirus vaccines on the childhood schedule.
It doesn't matter whether I financially benefited or not.
He likes to go around and say, well, we can't always do placebo trials, especially if there's already a vaccine that covers that disease. So he'll use an example like Prevnar 13. Prevnar 13 in its safety trial was tested against Prevnar 7, the earlier version of the vaccine. And he'll say you cannot test Prevnar 13 against a saline placebo because it would be unethical. You'd be denying children access to a vaccine that is already on the market, and that's not fair to them. But what he leaves out is that Prevnar 7 was never tested against a saline placebo, so we don't know if it's safe. So we're testing one product we don't know the safety profile on with another product we don't know the safety profile on. And this is how the entire vaccine schedule works. I like to call this the whiskey study. Let me explain. Let's say there's a group of people that are complaining that whiskey is making people drunk and they're crashing their cars and people are getting killed. Now, in order to test, does whiskey cause car accidents, you would set up a double-blind placebo trial. One group, the test group, would get the 10 shots of whiskey. The other group, the placebo group, would get 10 shots of water. And then we'd have them both drive on a driving course and see who has more accidents. It's obvious. But in this case, the whiskey company is the one doing the study. And what they say is, oh, we're going to do a placebo-based trial, but our placebo-based trial is not going to be water. It'll be vodka, another product already on the market. And so 10 people get the whiskey shots and 10 people get the vodka shots, and they had them all drive. And guess what? They had just as many car accidents. Therefore, whiskey does not cause car accidents because it didn't cause any more than the vodka did. And so to take this all the way to the end of Dr. Paul Offit's point, if vodka had ever been tested against 10 shots of water and there was no car accidents in the vodka group, then it would make sense to test the whiskey against the vodka. But we all know that study was never done, just like no vaccine placebo study was ever done. All you have to do is type in FDA licensed vaccines on your computer, and every vaccine that they give your child on the childhood schedule will appear there. And then you can click on any one you're interested in. Let's click on Recombavax HB. This is one of the hepatitis B vaccines they give your baby on the first day of life. Hello, welcome to the world. Gasp for your first breath, and here comes your first sexually transmitted disease. Now, go to vaccine insert. This is the insert or the warning label that is wrapped around the vaccine when it's delivered to your doctor. It has all kinds of information like what's in the vaccine, all the ingredients, side effects of the vaccine. But I want you to focus on section 6.1. This is where they talk about the clinical trial they relied upon to establish safety. It's always 6.1 on every single vaccine, so you can look at all of them. But in this one, you'll see that there was only 147 children in the entire trial. And they were only monitored for 5 days after each dose. 5 days. So think about it. Would you take any drug that was only monitored for safety for 5 days? If your child dies on day 6, it wasn't captured by this trial. They'll say, we didn't see any deaths. If a child had autism 2 years later, or other autoimmune diseases or neurological disorders, things that take years to develop, they'll say, we didn't see any in our trial. This is why every drug we take goes through a multi-year safety trial. Most of your issues are going to take years to develop, and if your study isn't that long, you'll never, ever see them. We had an interesting opportunity to talk about this with Dr. Stanley Plotkin, who's considered to be the reigning godfather of our vaccine program.
Dr. Stan Plotkin.
Dr. Plotkin.
Virtually every country in the world is affected by his vaccines.
Like the rubella vaccine, the rotavirus vaccine, rabies.
He trained just a generation of scientists, including myself, to think like he thinks.
He developed the standard textbook for vaccines in 1988.
Bill Gates calls his book a Bible for vaccinologists.
I hope it's more accurate than the Bible.
In 2018, our attorney, Aaron Siri, had the opportunity to depose under oath Dr. Stanley Plotkin. And he asked him this exact question: is a 5-day safety trial long enough to capture all of the side effects that people are complaining about from the hepatitis B vaccine?
Dr. Plotkin, this is the product, the manufacturer insert for Recambavax HB, correct?
Yes.
And the clinical trial experience would be found in section 6.1, correct? Correct? Dr. Plotkin?
Yes.
Okay. In section 6.1, when you look at the clinical trials that were done pre-licensure for Recambavax HB, how long does it say that safety was monitored after each dose?
Let's see. Uh, 5 days.
Okay. Is 5 days long enough to detect an autoimmune issue that arises after 5 days?
No.
Is 5 days long enough to detect any neurological disorder that arose from the vaccine after 5 days?
No.
There is no control group, correct?
It does not mention any control group, no.
If you turn to section 6.2, under the nervous system disorders, it states that there have been reports of Guillain-Barré syndrome, correct?
Yes.
As well as multiple sclerosis, exacerbation of multiple sclerosis, myelitis, including transverse myelitis, seizure, febrile seizure, peripheral neuropathy, including Bell's palsy, muscle weakness, hypothesia, and encephalitis, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, it
before
says at the top.
Before you go on, these reports are required to be included because they have been reported to the authorities as happening after vaccination. That is not proof that the vaccine caused those reactions.
In order to establish whether it's causal between the vaccine and the condition, you need a randomized placebo-controlled study. But
Yes.
that was not done for this hepatitis B vaccine before licensure, was it?
No.
Okay.
Without a control group, if you're looking for a phenomenon occurring in the vaccine group, you cannot judge that phenomenon without having a control group.
Isn't it true that it would now be considered unethical to conduct such a study today?
It would be, yes, it would be ethically difficult.
So this is how the entire game is played. They don't do a safety placebo trial before the vaccine is licensed. Then when people start lining up with all of these serious side effects, you say, well, can you do a placebo-based trial now? And they'll say, no, it's unethical. So they won't do it before. They won't do it after there's injuries. And when they can't do a study, your doctor says to you, I haven't seen any studies that show that these injuries are being caused by the vaccine. Therefore, I'm going to assume they're safe.
Do you agree with the CDC's recommendation that babies receive a hepatitis B on the first day of life?
Yes.
You stated that hepatitis B doesn't cause encephalitis, right?
That's in my opinion, yes.
But the IOM, after doing its review, determined it couldn't find science to support a causal determination one way or another. Correct?
Yes. But that means that they don't have evidence for the supposition.
That it either causes or doesn't cause.
Right.
They don't know.
They don't know because there aren't enough data. In the absence of data, my conclusion is that there's no proof that causation exists.
So if there's no data to show that it causes or it doesn't cause,
yes,
your supposition is that I understand correctly?
Yes,
is that it doesn't cause it.
That there's no proof that it does.
Okay. That's different than saying it doesn't cause it, correct?
Correct.
So let's be clear. Vaccine safety is not based on science and data. It's based on an assumption of safety. And that is the stalemate we find ourselves in. But there's one way out of it. Instead of doing a placebo-based study, you can do a retrospective study looking at people that have already made their choice, whether they're going to vaccinate or not. And then you just compare those groups, the ones that got the vaccines and the ones that decided not to vaccinate. We call that the vaccinated versus unvaccinated study. It's been done by a few independent scientists and institutes amongst small groups of children, but never by a major government agency or a major medical facility. The reason this study is important, I think, is illustrated by a study that was done in Guinea-Bissau, Africa, by a man named Dr. Peter Abe. He's one of the lead experts. He's pro-vaccine, and he develops vaccine programs for the third world. He had a DTP vaccine program he'd run 30 years ago in Guinea-Bissau, Africa, and recognized 30 years later, you know what? Only half the children in the country got that vaccine and the other half didn't. I could do a perfect comparative study between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And when he did that study, the results blew his mind.
This is about vaccines. And I think it's important to recognize that no routine vaccine was tested for overall effect on mortality in randomized trials before being introduced. I guess most of you think that we know what our vaccines are doing. We don't. The program we are talking about at the time, the vaccine program, was introduced sort of in the late 70s after the success with the eradication of smallpox. WHO made sort of the first immunization program for the low-income countries. What you comes out here, you had 2.3 times higher mortality if you are DTP vaccinated. And that is the most commonly used vaccine in the world. So the whooping cough vaccine or pertussis vaccine was associated with twofold higher mortality. You can have a vaccine which is fully protective against a specific disease, but associated with higher mortality. How is that possible?
After looking at this study, it was clear that the vaccine did protect against the diseases they were vaccinated for. The kids didn't die of diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. Only one problem. Once they looked at it, they were dying at 5 times the rate of all of these other issues. So it was clear that though it was protecting against these diseases, it was weakening their immune systems to all sorts of other problems. One of the other scientists on this study did a TED Talk on this.
In spite of being protected against 3 deadly diseases, the introduction of DTP was associated with increased overall mortality. Children who received DTP vaccine had 5 times higher risk of dying than those who didn't. And this is just one example of many studies now done of DTP vaccine, and they all show the same. DTP vaccinated children have higher mortality than those who didn't get DTP. So it appears that DTP vaccine has negative non-specific effects. The protection against the 3 deadly diseases comes at a very high price, namely increased risk of dying. So, with the best of intentions, the use of DTP vaccine may kill more children than it saves. I know these results are extremely uncomfortable, and most people, including myself, just wish they weren't true. But this is what the data tells us.
That was just a study of one vaccine in a group of children. What if you studied children that were receiving not one vaccine, but between 72 and 100 vaccines by the time they're 18? Of course, I'm talking about the most vaccinated nation in the world, the United States of America.
Our federal health authorities actually paid the Institute of Medicine to look at the safety of the vaccine schedule as a whole. And the Institute of Medicine, after conducting that review, came back with a report in 2013. The report said no studies have compared the differences in health outcomes between entirely unimmunized populations of children and fully immunized children.
It's the CDC's responsibility to do those studies, and they've been ordered again and again and again to do them, and they have refused. But the Institute of Medicine has looked at the vaccine schedule and said in their 2011 report There are over 150 injuries that are likely to be associated with vaccines that have never been studied.
Well, what did the CDC do after the Institute of Medicine issued that report?
Instead of doing the study, they ended up doing a study on how to do a vax versus unvax study.
It went and it paid a whole lot of money to issue a white paper on how to conduct that study comparing vaccinated versus unvaccinated kids. That white paper came out in 2015. Now, here we are in 2025, 10 years later. They've still never published that study. Now, have they never done the study? I can't tell you.
This is information that vaccine safety advocates want and have been asking for a long time. And I'm not sure why it hasn't been done.
This simple study would shut up every anti-vaxxer forever. I have to believe that they have done this study every way they possibly can. And they can't seem to figure out how to make it look like the vaccinated are healthier. But that's just my opinion. Based on several other studies I've seen that did compare vaccinated to unvaccinated, but mainstream medicine says, well, the cohort was too small, or they poke holes in it saying it wasn't done by a major medical institution. So if we're ever going to get a vax versus unvaccinated study that people believe in, it's going to have to be done by highly credited scientists at a major medical institution who has a database big enough to do a thorough, robust investigation comparing the vaccinated to the unvaccinated.
As fate would have it, Dell met the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Health System, Marcus Servos.
I'll never forget that meeting because you said something to me. You said, "I've watched your film. It's intriguing." But you said, I'll never forget. You said you've been saying something and watched your videos that I had an issue with. You said that they cannot say that vaccines are safe because they've never done the proper safety studies. And you said to me, I actually researched that because I wanted to see if that was true. And you said, I'm sorry to have to report to you that you're actually right about that. But the
I say it
proper safety studies have not been done.
And to now too. It's same thing. I still say it now. The proper safety studies haven't been done.
So then I said to you, all right.
Still true.
And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't agree with you. I believe in vaccines. And I said, would you ever consider doing a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study? And you said I would do anything wherever the data is the data, right?
Yeah.
The first time I met with Dr. Zervos, he agreed to do a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study. I mean, I was ecstatic. He was perfect. Ford Medical Center is one of the greatest research centers in the world, and Dr. Zervos is in the middle of being a hero for having just worked out the entire Flint, Michigan water crisis.
74 miles of large diameter pipeline will stretch
For decades, Flint, one of the poorest cities in America, had bought its water from Detroit. Instead of staying on the Detroit water supply while the pipeline was being built, the city would temporarily get its water from the Flint River. That decision would force the city to activate an old water treatment plant.
Here's the plant.
This is what is coming out of the tap. Water's brown, has a bad odor. We cannot drink the water.
They soon became a breeding ground for Legionella, and people were getting sick.
The oxygen, you're on that all the time, or do you ever get to take it?
I want it all the time.
Yeah.
Her doctor, Marcus Zervos, had been treating a chronic skin infection that her weakened immune system couldn't control.
They are doing a lot better.
I'm ecstatic.
You know, if I can get them healed over a little bit more, I'm going to get you an appointment with those transplant doctors.
There'd been 90 confirmed cases in the year and a half following the water switch. 12 people had died. Sean McElmurray had pulled together a team of 23 scientists and experts from around the state. The team says the state wouldn't authorize them to start the search for the source of the outbreak. Dr. Zervos was the infectious disease expert, and he was worried about the delay.
It was critical to start right away because by June, we expected to see more cases of Legionnaire's disease and there would be more deaths, which is what we expressed in a meeting that included top leadership at MDHHS.
I remember my colleague telling him that if he didn't do that, people could die.
unfortunately, Nick Lyon's response was that, well, they have to die of something.
I mean, you're just in shock as a result of him saying that. The director of the health department.
Dr. Zervos seemed perfect. He'd stood up against the entire health system in Michigan, so I figured he'd probably be brave enough to do this study. But then a couple of years went by and still no study. I called Aaron and said, why don't we go see if we can't convince him to finally do this study?
I flew down to Michigan and we went to meet Dr. Zervos in person. We said, look, here's your opportunity. The results should be directly in line with the orthodoxy. The vaccinated kids should be healthy across the board. He could be hailed a hero for finally shutting up the anti-vaxxers. He said he's willing to do it. The study was going to use the data they literally already have in their fingertips. The data of millions of people who are already in the Henry Ford Health System database, including hundreds, maybe thousands of completely unvaccinated children, as well as obviously children who are vaccinated. What that would allow is taking that multi-million person database, segregating out the children who had been in the Henry Ford system from birth continuously for a few years. Because it's a captive HMO environment, meaning it provides the insurance and it provides the medical care, it has most of the health records for these kids, including if they go out of the Henry Ford medical system, Henry Ford, as the insurer, was still paying for it. So they have the health codes for all the medical services that these kids got. So if you segregated out those kids, now you have a cohort of children from birth for at least a few years where you knew everything about them.
I previously was a program director at Henry Ford Hospital, so I know it well. It's one of the best integrated health systems to do research.
Henry Ford receives over $90 million in annual research funding, with nearly 700 residents and fellows in 53 ACGME accredited training programs.
I think Henry Ford, like other institutions, has a bias towards the goodness of vaccines.
You can't miss it. It's a full-page letter here from Henry Ford with 56 signatures saying in bold letters, the science is clear, vaccines save lives.
If the results came back demonstrating that the battery of vaccines was associated with chronic diseases and that unvaccinated appeared healthier over time, such a result would be particularly convincing.
I'm for vaccines. I'm not, I'm obviously for vaccines, but I think it's the best way of controlling infectious diseases, which are deadly. I'm for mandatory vaccination. Henry Ford is mandatory vaccination because of me.
Henry Ford is one of about 90 healthcare systems across the United States that are working to enroll a total of 30,000 volunteers in the Moderna COV vaccine study as quickly as possible.
This is the worst pandemic of the last 100 years, and our best hope of dealing with this is by having an effective vaccine.
Henry Ford is requiring all 33,000 staff members to be fully vaccinated by September 10th, 2021.
The health system says this is consistent with its existing vaccination policy, which includes team members get the flu shot every year and stay current with other vaccinations.
It appeared to me that Henry Ford was pro-vaccine, not anti-vaccine. So I had to assume the only reason they would do this study was to prove us wrong.
Dell and I thought that was an excellent opportunity. They can do the comparison and presumably they could get it published.
We only had one request.
The ask was, whatever the outcome, you publish it. Would he stick to that if the results show that unvaccinated kids are healthier? And when he realized that if he submitted that for publication, he's going to face the wrath of his entire profession? Didn't know.
This was our greatest fear. I mean, vaccines are the holy grail of modern medicine. And anyone that decides to challenge vaccines in any way are essentially considered heretics.
Vaccines are safe,
Vaccines are safe and effective.
Vaccines are safe and highly effective.
Safe and effective.
Safe and they're highly effective.
Vaccines are one of humanity's most incredible accomplishments, and they've saved millions of lives.
Childhood vaccines have prevented about 4 million deaths around the world every year.
The overwhelming majority of pediatricians in this country strongly support vaccinations.
Missing her vaccination dates.
We're not vaccinating.
The schedule as it's currently recommended is well tested.
We've studied them in so many millions of children.
Billions of people.
Decades of extensive peer-reviewed scientific studies.
Centuries of science.
The science is pretty settled.
Settled for many years now.
This idea that we're taking too many vaccines, there's really no science to back that up.
The scientific community publishes paper after paper after paper.
There is nothing to see. There's nothing to see.
I will not stand here and let conspiracy theories distract from real solutions.
Most doctors can't tolerate being called quacks or having their reputation destroyed. And I went from treating the head of the laboratory at my hospital for hypertension to becoming, somebody that was doubted on every levels after a while because of one thing that I said, which was, can we stop giving vaccines to my sick patients and give it to them on the day of discharge? And had they not tried to intimidate me, doubt me, and pushed me to research and show that what I saw was actually real, I would still be lockstep working as a regular doctor.
The Florida Department of Health, in partnership with the governor, is going to be working to end all vaccine mandates in Florida law. All of them. All of them.
My experience with discussing or disclosing harms associated with vaccines is that those are not welcome ideas or conversations.
That move from the Florida Surgeon General, a doctor there, drawing condemnation from public health experts.
Whether it's ignorance, it's stupidity, or it's malice, at the end of the day, people are going to get hurt.
He's not going to necessarily receive a warm embrace by some of the people in his profession, but that's really what courage is all about.
It's a very hostile environment, both scientifically and in the media, for individuals who reach conclusions or have opinions that counter mainstream ideas.
Every independent scientist that has ever ventured into doing a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study of any kind is immediately under assault. There's one by Dr. Anthony Mawson out of Mississippi. He did a homeschool study of about 600 kids and discovered alarming rates of allergies, ADD, ADHD, neurological disorders, and a 4-fold increased risk of autism amongst the vaccinated. As soon as the study came out, his job was under threat. In fact, I asked him if he'd be in this film. He said, look, you can show my studies, but I have just been dragged through the coals on this. I can't take anymore. Then there's Dr. Paul Thomas.
Hey, how you guys doing? What I'm seeing on this side is a pink, dull, scarred up eardrum.
I've been a pediatrician for 35 years. I'm now retired. What I noticed in the first decade or so of my practice is kids were getting sicker and sicker. And over the next decade, as more and more patients chose not to vaccinate, I got to see the difference. But I wanted to see, could I prove it? So we got all the data from my practice. We looked at every baby born into my practice and published it in an international journal of public health. What we found, and that study was peer-reviewed, it was robust, we found massive increases. I mean, we're talking 400 to 500% more. Allergies, autoimmune conditions, neurodevelopmental issues, and then we had infections of all kinds, massively increased in the vaccinated compared to the unvaccinated. What happened when I published that study? Within days of it being available online, I get a call from my attorney. Don't go see any patients, don't write any prescriptions, don't go into the office. Your license has been emergently suspended. You are a threat to public health.
What's today? Today is the last time I will be doing clinical medicine in Oregon. Knowing that you guys are keeping it going, the heart of this place lives on.
So what if Dr. Zervos does this study and it turns out exactly the same way as the others? Would he still publish it? That was the question.
Years went by. In 2020, I was informed they had put together a study. When I had that study in my hand and I looked at it, the significance of it, it was an actual study that when published was the first step in changing this landscape. Weeks went by and then more time went by. And at some point, what I learned was it was not going to get submitted for publication.
Aaron called me and said they finished the study. Only one problem. They're not going to publish it. I mean, it was everything we were afraid of. I called Dr. Zervos and I said, can I fly out and meet you for dinner? And he agreed. I wanted to look Zervos in the eyes and ask him, what's so damning in this study that you're afraid to publish it? I wanted to know what was in this study. I hadn't seen it. I also imagined there's got to be a way to talk him into publishing this study. But one thing was for sure. This was my last chance. I'm going to bring hidden cameras and recording equipment so that no matter what happens at this dinner, I can prove it happened. What do you think about the study you guys have done?
It's important information because of, it did show a difference between the groups. I don't know how to.
Oh, she got it.
How to explain? I don't know how to explain it, but it's important. It was an important finding. The study was for what.
Do you find any flaws in the study? I mean, is there a way they can do the study? You can do the study better with what's there?
Not that I. Not
No.
that I know.
Impact of childhood vaccination on short and long-term chronic health outcomes in children, a birth cohort study.
This one is really robust.
Let's say the results.
Yeah, what were the results?
The CDC put out a white paper on how you would look at vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and we followed it to a T.
I agree with that.
No,
Do you agree with that?
we 100% did. We looked at this every other way and sideways.
I think this is a devastating commentary on our public health interventions, because if this is true, we are systematically making kids sick, and not just a little bit sick, very sick.
Publishing something like that, I might as well retire. I'd be finished.
I mean, I'm just curious. What in this data makes you think it will be as catastrophic to your career as you think? What was he so afraid of? The study was a bombshell.
18,468 subjects, 1,957 of them were fully unvaccinated. When comparing the health outcomes of the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, they found an increased risk in the vaccinated of several chronic health conditions. The vaccinated subjects were over 4 times more likely to have an asthma diagnosis.
4.29 times in the adjusted. And that seems, I've looked at a lot of studies, that's 3.26 to 5.65.
They also found 3 times the risk for atopic diseases,
which is kind of a subset of allergic diseases.
They found a almost 6 times risk for autoimmune disease.
The autoimmune diseases this paper looked at include thrombocytopenic purpura, rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, MS, multiple sclerosis, and Guillain-Barré syndrome. They mentioned there are over 80 different autoimmune diseases, and what their data showed for autoimmunity, 6 times increase in those who got vaccines when compared to the unvaccinated.
Which is staggering, because autoimmune disorders really represent significant morbidity and health costs and suffering, accrued over a lifetime.
Neurodevelopmental disorders.
What kind of numbers are we talking about? Do you remember?
5.5 times risk for neurodevelopmental disorders.
We know that the immune system is intimately connected with both brain development and brain functioning. And so when the immune system gets triggered by illness, potentially by vaccination, you can get neuropsychiatric symptoms, presumably related to brain inflammation and, immune processes in the brain.
2.92 times the amount of motor disabilities, 4.47 times the amount of speech disorders in the vaccinated compared to the unvaccinated.
3 times the rate of developmental delay.
They found the same things I found related to allergy and autoimmunity. Also, 6 times more acute and chronic ear infections.
Interestingly, there were several health conditions where they couldn't even do this analysis because there were none in the unvaccinated group. The way that the mathematical formulas work, you can't have a 0 in any one group and be able to compare risk.
For example, there were 262 children who had ADHD in the vaccinated group. Amongst the unvaccinated group, there were 0 cases of ADHD. 0.
These ones are just mind-boggling. These conditions were not found at all in almost 2,000 unvaccinated kids. 0 brain dysfunction, 0 diabetes, 0 behavioral problems, 0 learning disabilities, 0 intellectual disabilities, 0 tics, and 0 other psychological disabilities in the unvaccinated.
I'm going to read the conclusion here. Despite this, and in contrast to our expectations, again, the author's expectations was they'd conduct the study and probably find vaccinated people a whole lot healthier than the unvaccinated, right? This is what we found. We found that exposure to vaccination was independently associated with an overall 2.5-fold increase in the likelihood of developing a chronic health condition when compared to children unexposed to vaccination.
Any vaccine, even just one, compared to none, had 2.5 times more likely to have a chronic health condition.
There were no chronic health conditions associated with an increased risk in the unexposed group. None.
What does this graph mean? Explain that to me. So it's no vaccines versus vaccines.
That's basically your likelihood of not having a chronic health condition.
They did something called time to event analysis. At 10 years, the likelihood of being free from a chronic illness was only 43% in the vaccinated group versus 83% in the unvaccinated group. It's a big difference.
So if you're unvaccinated, you stay up here above the set, like was it 80% of you are going to be perfectly healthy, whereas you're dropping below the 50 percentile, which is exactly what I've been stating. I've been saying 54% of America's children have a chronic illness now.
It's right there.
That's basically what that showed.
10 years follow-up. 57% of the vaccinated had a chronic health condition in just 10 years. That should shock everyone.
Let's remember, the entire conversation of the moment in America is the fact that 54% of our children are chronically ill. And here we are looking at the study, and it's almost exactly those numbers. 57% of the vaccinated are chronically ill, whereas only 17% of the unvaccinated.
I think because I have an interest in vaccines and I understand off-target, non-specific effects, I was sad, but I wasn't surprised.
I can tell you that these data are consistent with my greatest concerns regarding the childhood vaccination schedule. That despite the good intentions of the field of vaccinology, that is backfiring on us.
In virtually every single chronic health category, the vaccinated are doing far worse. But there is one issue. It's the one that I have been talking about for years and puts me into the middle of this entire investigation, and that is autism. And in this study, it appears that there was no statistical significance with the vaccine-autism connection. And I wanted to know why. Yet autism is neutral. Does that mean we're wrong about autism, Mark?
No.
No?
No. It's there are a lot of variables involved, and it's hard to control for.
When you don't have a lot of instances, as occurred here with autism, where you only have 23 instances of autism in the vaccinated group and 1 instance of autism in the unvaccinated group, that wasn't enough instances to actually be able to determine whether or not there is a statistically significant increased rate of autism.
So even though the study shows all sorts of neurodevelopmental disorders, when it comes to autism, there weren't enough children diagnosed with autism in this group to answer that question. That is why studies like this need to be replicated at even larger scales.
The fact is there's a signal, and the signal is unvaccinated kids healthy. That should be a very important positive study.
Yes.
The converse of this is kids that are vaccinated, it doesn't look so good, particularly for the neuropsychiatric disorders. Looking at the measure of association, I'm an epidemiologist, I live in this, neutral is 1. Neutral means no association is 1. If it's 2, it means there's a twofold risk. When we're doing non-randomized data, especially from corporate data stores, what have you, we have a higher threshold. And a good threshold to remember is 4. If there's a 4-fold increased risk in a data set, if we were to go do this somewhere else, almost certainly we would find an association when this is telling us that the risk relationship is greater than 4.
I was sitting at that dinner reading this study for the first time and thinking, oh my God, the world needs to see this study. But the more I pressed Dr. Zervos to publish it, the more excuses he had.
I think it's a good study, but it does have limitations to it. The argument against it is going to be that it's same thing. Retrospective is not a controlled group. There's no control group. That there's other factors involved. A heterogeneous group of conditions. The perfect example was hydroxychloroquine.
Did I happen to mention that not only was Dr. Zervos at the center of the Flint, Michigan water crisis, he was also at the center of the hydroxychloroquine study that was done by Ford and showed a 50% reduction in death for those that received hydroxychloroquine. And for that, he got attacked by Tony Fauci and virtually everybody in mainstream media and the medical world.
The Henry Ford Hospital study that was published was a non-controlled retrospective cohort study. So that study is a flawed study.
In the PR at Henry Ford, they put a gag order on me. I couldn't talk about anything. And they said to me, Mark, so what? So you go on CNN. Which they would be happy. They'd be thrilled to have you on CNN. And, and you say what you feel. But they're just going to twist what you say anyway and make you look bad. Anyway, so what good is it going to do? So I should still be able to defend myself and, and say what the inaccuracies are. So I'm thinking to myself, maybe the Henry Ford PR was right, is that it's just going to get twisted around anyway, make you look bad and you get fired. So what good does it do? So what's going to happen with this one is the same thing, is that somebody's going to come back and they're going to say, the study is flawed, as opposed to looking at it in the way that it should be looked at. How about looking at this as important scientific information that can inform how the proper study should be done? Won't be taken like that. And then I can say, why? Because there's a political agenda to it.
I get it. It has its issues. Any retrospective study is always going to have the same problems, right? So you always have the same attacks upon it.
There are limitations to retrospective studies. That's the reason why we like to do randomized clinical trials when we can, because they don't have the same limitations. The major one that you have to worry about with retrospective studies is things that are different between the groups that you're comparing that you're unable to account for.
If you want a flawless study, do a placebo-controlled trial. Any retrospective study is going to have flaws in it. But in this study, they made a point to address many of the flaws that they found themselves.
If someone were critical of the study, I think issues that a researcher might raise would be things like the different lengths of follow-up for the groups between the children who received no vaccines and the children who received vaccines. The authors actually did do a sensitivity analysis where they limited the analysis to children who had at least a certain amount of follow-up.
When they limited the follow-up time for both the vaccinated and the unvaccinated to 1 year, it's still 2.75 times higher rate of chronic disease in the vaccinated. And when they limited it to 3 years, it's 3.38 times the rate of chronic disease in the vaccinated. And when they limit it to 5 years, it's 4 times greater. So no matter what they did to limit the follow-up time, the results of the study didn't change.
The results indicate that the different follow-up period really did not have a substantial effect on the research question that they were probing. Another concern is that there are just big differences in how likely the children who received no vaccines were to seek healthcare compared to the children who received vaccines. So in other words, could the differences we're finding in the study just be due to the fact that these kids were being seen less often, and so they're getting fewer diagnoses? To try and address this, they limited the population of children who didn't receive any vaccines to children who at least had some number of medical visits. And even in that sensitivity analysis, the main findings persisted.
In this study, they adjusted for confounders. Confounders can be age, socioeconomic status, gender, racial, ethnic groups, and used a technique called Cox proportional hazards, which means holding all of the factors equal, what's the relationship between the factor of interest and the outcome?
Even after they were adjusted for, the effect of these characteristics was actually pretty small. I actually expected that those adjustments would have a really powerful effect, but they actually didn't. And when you do a lot of sensitivity analysis and what you're seeing doesn't change much, that can be reassuring. The authors did a good job with the information that they had. I have seen studies on vaccines published in good journals that are much weaker in quality.
Is what your study shows, is it important?
Yeah, it is important. You know who you should send it to? Well, to what I told you a while ago. Because I'm just not going to do. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to end up like Diddy or I don't want to suffer what McCullough did. But I give him credit for taking it. Standing up for it. But I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to replicate it.
In any other climate, in a regular climate, you would have put this study out just as it is, right? If we weren't in this world of censorship,
I'd put it out just how it is.
You would.
I put it out just how it is. Yeah. I'd like to just finish out my work, doing international work. Part of my reluctance to do anything is that nothing is going to come out of it other than me losing my job, which I'd rather not see happen. I'm open to it.
We're here because I fully respect you and I recognize the danger of. I said to you, if you do this study, I'm going to repeat it because I don't remember. I said, if you do the study, you're going to come under fire. You said, I don't care about that. I'm all about the data and I'm about to retire anyway. That's literally what you said.
Yeah.
So your energy has definitely changed on that. But
energy's changing.
Let me put it this way. I put my whole career on the line because I saw an issue.
Because what?
I saw an issue that is affecting the children of America and the world. We have a serious growing problem of autoimmune disease, chronic illness. I am not saying that vaccines are the only cause, but I'm saying this program needs some serious work. We had much better health when we were getting 10, 20 vaccines. At 54 shots with 72 doses, it is clear we are not making our children healthier. They're going the wrong direction. If there's a way to do this program better, which I believe, I've never said I'm trying to eradicate vaccines from the planet, but we are at an autism rate now of 1 in 26, 28. We have some serious issues.
No, I actually agree with that. Is there a different way we could be doing it?
Right, but how do we get there if I finally, what are the odds? I find someone like you that has got the clout. If we can't If I can't get the study out, then what hope is there for every kid in the future? I can't do shit for them.
Unless there's a change in leadership, nothing is going to happen. Publishing one study like this one is not gonna. It's not gonna. It's actually the right thing to do. I don't want to say it's not the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do, but I just don't want to. And I don't want to say I have enough problems, but I've got enough things like that I'm already dealing with. And I don't want another one.
Hold on. I just want to say this. This is the Galileo moment. I believe this changes more lives than anything there is. If we can fix this vaccine program, it doesn't just change millions of children's lives here in America. It changes worldwide. You'll be the father of the change in the system. That's historic. And I want to work with you to do that. This is why we're here.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying.
We have an ability to do something that no one ever dreams possible. If it's not you, then who?
For some reason, hammering always comes towards me. So I can't handle it. I really, and I'm not a good person. I can't handle it. I'm not a good person, but I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Because I've got other stuff to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, really emotional. He's just going to compartmentalize it away. I think someone could look at this and be like, it's unconscionable. How could he? And I think the way that he can is the way we all can do things that, not do things we don't want to do is we just convince ourselves, he's saying it doesn't matter. This is one study. It won't move the needle. It's too much for me. I can't. And, maybe he's right. Maybe it is too much for him.
It's very important the study sees the light of day. In the scientific literature, and for the advancement of science, we must have balance. There are always pros and cons to everything. And when we have a deep-seated religious bias in favor of vaccines, we've lost balance. And when we lose balance, the entire scientific enterprise goes off track. And when that happens, large populations are harmed.
I cannot help but ask myself the question, how many children will suffer a chronic illness that they maybe wouldn't have to suffer had this information been out there?
I treat a lot of kids with neurodevelopmental disability and neuropsychiatric illness, and their lives and their families' lives are hell. And I know so many parents who suffer all kinds of guilt. The parents who've had adverse reactions or who've witnessed neurodevelopmental regression in connection with vaccination, they are devastated. I've had so many mothers say to me, my child is like this because of me, at my hand. I did this to them.
I think we are absolutely destroying our future by destroying the overall health of our most precious asset, our children.
We need to know if this is true. We are morally and ethically obligated to replicate this study again and again and again and find out if this is accurate and if this is true. We have to.
The fact that this study hasn't been peer-reviewed and hasn't been published is extremely concerning. It's important knowledge, and other healthcare systems really do need to replicate the analysis. This question really does need to be probed. It's a very important research question.
I challenge you, yes, you the doctors, you the researchers, do the research. Find within your data set, within your system, those who are unvaccinated and compare them to the vaccinated cohort.
This is one data set. You could replicate this again. There are other captive payer systems.
Let Kaiser Permanente Southern California do it. And let the Harvard Pilgrim system in Boston do it. And all the other health systems around the country. And maybe even the CDC with the VSD. And with that, we can start actually addressing the problem that these vaccines might be causing.
If these results are valid, this is an absolute sea change in our understanding of the off-target and non-specific effects of vaccination. And we will have to reconsider the way we go about our vaccination program.
This is a cease and desist letter we received from the attorneys for Henry Ford Health. This letter leads me to believe that they really don't want us to release this film. In the letter, Henry Ford accuses us of defamation for saying that the unpublished study wasn't submitted for publication due to the results of the study. They assert that the reason the study was never submitted for publication was, quote, due to significant and serious flaws in its data and methodology, and because it did not come close to meeting the rigorous scientific standards Henry Ford Health and its researchers demand. But we just heard from Dr. Marcus Zervos, the lead author on this unpublished study and a world-leading expert on infectious disease at Henry Ford. He told me he believed the study was a good study and he would publish it just as it is. Only one problem. If he does publish it, he believes it would be the end of his career. He'd be finished. Not my words, but his. Now, even if Dr. Zervos stands by his study, does that mean it's a perfect study? Of course not. Can we say that the Henry Ford study proves that vaccines are causing the chronic disease epidemic? No, we cannot. A retrospective study does not prove causation. What we can say is that we believe it is showing a signal, a red flag waved in the air by the scientific method. Houston, there may be a real problem here. Now, this concern is heightened by the fact that this unpublished study does not stand alone. It's not an anomaly. It now stands with several other studies that have all shown similar signals. So there will certainly be attacks on the limitations of this study, which can be found in most retrospective studies. And we acknowledge those limitations. But the only way to really refute it is to do your own vaccinated versus unvaccinated study and prove us wrong. That's what I believe Dr. Zervos attempted to do and failed. But as parents watching this film right now, you have to ask yourself a very important question. Why hasn't a single health agency or major medical institution in the world been able to produce one single vaccinated versus completely unvaccinated study that shows that the vaccinated children are healthier? Wasn't that the entire purpose of the vaccine program? To make our children healthier? And although this may be an inconvenient study for anyone who said that the vaccine program was safe, there is a bright side. In every one of these studies so far, there is a group of children who are thriving, who aren't suffering from many of the ailments that plague America's children, who have barely any cases of neurodevelopmental disorders or autoimmune disease. They are living in a world that is flourishing with health because their parents went in a different direction. You now have even more data. You've been informed. What are you going to do about it? That choice is yours. Thank you for watching An Inconvenient Study, an ICANN and Del Bigtree film. The Informed Consent Action Network, ICANN, is a nonprofit that's committed to protecting one of the most fundamental human rights, the right to make medical decisions without coercion, censorship, or government overreach. But here's what most people don't realize. The progress you see, the lawsuits that change policy, the investigations that expose the truth, the research, the legal battles, the filmmaking, even the education we deliver every week, all of it is only made possible by people just like you. There are no corporate sponsors behind this work. There's no government funding, trust me. It's ordinary Americans who make these extraordinary victories possible. If this film moved you, if you believe the public deserves this level of transparency, if you want to help us take this message to every corner of the globe, then I'm asking for your help. Go to ICanDecide.org and click donate, or just scan this QR code. Every contribution, big or small, fuels the lawsuits, the research, the data, and the advocacy that change real lives every day. Together, we can protect informed consent for future generations. Together, we can hold our institutions accountable. And together, we can keep making films just like this one, until every parent, every doctor, and every citizen around the world has access to the information they deserve. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for supporting I Can. You are the reason all of this is possible.
All right, let's see if we can get the picture to work. I don't know what happened. That evidence is pretty hard to argue with. What do you think? Why in the world is this doing this? Well, there we go. Well, hot dog. I love it when a plan comes together. Now, the reason I showed that is because this affects just about everybody. Just about everybody. And people are sadly, under the assumption that these things are safe. And sadly, that's not the truth. As you who have taken the time to watch that video can see that there's evidence that's not the truth. I will never understand for the life of me a newborn baby just out of the womb, and they want to give it a vaccine. A vaccine, I think it's for something to do with hepatitis or something. Just a little logic, common sense, a little critical thinking, some questions, because people are not given the proper advice ahead of time. And the results sometimes can be deadly. In cases, it has been deadly. They call it SIDS, where the child will have the reaction almost immediately, or with 24 hours, 36 hours, with short period of time. The devastation. So the reason I show this video is hopefully those who have taken the time to watch it with me will now go out and just tell people, listen, there's a video out there by Del Bigtree. You can look it up. It's a documentary. Just go watch it. Then make up your mind. Just watch what they present and then make up your mind. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, don't do this or don't do that. I'm just asking you to take an hour and a half out of your life to learn something that could drastically change the outlook for you and your family. Everybody's affected by this. In 2020, I was reporting about a patent, and the patent fell under the C-19 vaccine. And I was reporting the patent number, which is 2020 060606. I can't remember the rest of it. I'm going off by. I think if you put that much in there, you'll see. And it's all about a patented injectable system that uses nanotechnology to have mechanical robots going all through one's body and basically turning you into a transceiver. A transceiver is a piece of equipment that most commonly is called a walkie-talkie, or when you really get fancy, a cell phone. There are reports of people walking by devices that are constantly scanning for other local Bluetooth devices. As they walk by these devices, they're triggered by these people walking by. There are reports of people who have been buried and still giving off a signal even after they're 6 feet under. I don't know how accurate some of this is. I can only tell you this is some of the things that I have seen. I don't doubt it. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it's false. I'm just saying other people are coming up with these things and reporting them. And they're people like me. What have I got to gain? I'm not in this I don't make any money doing what I'm doing. I don't do this for money. I do this in whatever minute way I can help and give information, hopefully, that is worthy of your listening to. But I'm not in this. Actually, it costs me money. I don't ask for donations. If you want to donate, that's fine. Whatever donation you give goes to the station. Doesn't go to me. I don't get a penny. I mean, that's the partners that put this station together. That's what we agreed upon. Money that comes in, that's just to help pay for the stuff for the station. We have a variety of bills that we have every month. They have to be paid in order for us to do what we're able to do. So I'm not in this to make any money. I'm in this hopefully to give people enough information on something that can make a drastic change that can actually help. And from watching what I watched just a few minutes ago, and those of you who stuck through it with me, I think it would be fair to say it's at minimum, needs a second look when you're considering these things, these injections. At minimum. There are doctors who are honest at heart would tell you, don't do it at all, period. It's just not worth it. It's almost like playing Russian roulette. Some of them who get this, what did they say? It was 57%. So you got 43% of them who are able to withstand this without showing some significant degree of degradation in their health. You want to play those odds? It was the question I was asking when all the crazy C-19 thing was going on. And I was asking people, do you know that this thing that they have you so afraid of, this virus, has for the general public, has well over 99% recovery rate without the necessity of medical intervention? It's just a flu. Of course, it's a little more than just a flu. The patent that I told you about uses injectable technology that can be put into people's bodies. And from that point forward, everything about that individual's body can be reported back to a central station. How fast your heart is, what your blood pressure is, how your breathing is doing, last time you ate, what drugs have you taken, last time you urinated, everything. Now, why these wackos want to know something like that, I have no clue. But there it is in black and white. Everything. You will no longer have privacy. This is something I've spoken about recently more and more. Our privacy is going out the window. You want to read an article, and some of these articles, they want your email. Some of them want your email and your mobile phone number. And then you click off, oh, it's okay to send me texts. No. There was a time when privacy was, they say, if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to worry about. Yeah, I got something to hide. It's called my privacy. I like my privacy. I'm not like I'm doing something that is against the law. It's my privacy. But that doesn't seem to be of any value anymore. People are willing to give it up, and then they take that data that they have, that they accumulate thousands and thousands and thousands of names and mobile phone numbers, and they put it out on the market. It's almost like they call black oil was black gold was oil. Well, this is kind of like the black gold of the internet. The ability to gather all this data and then sell it. Your name is, God knows how many places my name is. But, seriously, there's no privacy anymore. Some of this stuff is just, it's horrendous. And I personally, as I mentioned earlier, I personally growing up, we didn't have autism. I didn't know anybody who had autism. Not a person, not a single person going all through high school. I think the maximum that we had was like 2 or 3. It wasn't pushed so hard as it is today. I think that there was one time when I didn't get it, I still was able to go to school. It was like, oh, okay, you can't come to school. You weren't injected with poison, so you can't come. This is the society that we're dealing with today. This is, one of a bazillion different kind of problems that we are presented with today to keep us in constant chaos, in a constant state of confusion, so that a certain amount of people, relatively small in comparison to how many good people there are, however, they're in places, unfortunately, of power and authority. And by doing this, it keeps them in their positions, and they get to keep that power and that authority. And they get to abuse the system, and they get to rake in all kinds of money and assets and benefits that none of us would ever be able to get. It's sad. It's truly sad, because there are people who could fulfill those positions and truly be representatives of our government. Our people, that we would have a government that would be representative of the people. What's happening with all the Republicans have had office now for almost a year coming up, very close. 11 months, right? 11 months and counting. What's happened? Nothing. We've got a bunch of pansies up there. For whatever reason, I can only tell you how I see it in my eyes. And my eyes tell me the people who said there's going to be a price to pay for those who have done wrong, I don't see any people paying any prices. I mean, of any significance. I'm told that inflation is, we've got inflation under control. It's lower than it was before, and blah, 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 blah. I told you earlier, the only real thing I see a big difference in is eggs. Everything else is, some things are more expensive. How can that be going down? No big difference in the price of gasoline, which is one of the vital essence that we need. You can't get anywhere without a car anymore. Well, you're not going to be able to get anywhere if you don't have gas to put in your car. It's horrible when, I experienced a time when gasoline had become so short, they were literally rationing gasoline. It was called the Arab embargo of 74, 70, somewhere in the 70s. Unfortunately, during that time, majority of that time, I was in service. We didn't have to worry about that garbage. We had service. We had gas stations on base. But there were people outside, off base. They were waiting hours sometimes and limited to 5 gallons. 5 gallons. If you got a gas guzzler, 5 gallons. I mean, gas guzzlers get 10, 12 miles to the gallon. You're not going very far before you have to get gas again and have to wait. And during that time, a man by the name of Stanley Meyer decided he'd had enough of that nonsense. A country smaller than the size of Texas was putting our country on its knees, bringing us to a halt, causing chaos within the country because they were withholding the oil that we needed to produce gasoline. So he decided he was going to find an alternative. The alternative he found was water. He developed a car that ran on water. Sadly for him, he didn't know at the time, and probably I would have done the same thing he did, but he went public with this. He had a local station videotape him running his car on water. He had found a way to split water very quickly, very efficiently, and then use that gas that the water is derived, the gas is derived from the water, use that as a fuel for a vehicle, and it worked wonderfully. The sad truth, he decided he wanted to patent that product. He went to the government and he said, listen, government, look at all the money I'm going to save you guys, especially in your Navy. You got the whole ocean for fuel. Wrong. Because within a year he was dead. First he was offered, he did an interview and said, I've been offered a lot of money, a lot more than I could spend or any one of my generations coming after me could ever spend. But I can't do that. I've decided to go forward. I'm paraphrasing. I've decided to go forward with this project. The project was, he had reached a point where he was able to take the injector plugs out of cars that were injecting gasoline with a modified injector plug, insert that in the same vehicle that you're using now, and then instead of putting gasoline in your tank, you put water in your tank. In the short period thereafter, he was poisoned. He was having dinner with his brother, and one of the representatives that was, I believe, one of the, possibly an investor, they were having dinner, and he said, oh, I'm not feeling well, stood up, said, I've been poisoned, and he died. And that was a message to his brother, you better steer clear. We've had so many people that have come up in the past that have had devices and technologies that could help us. But because of this small group of people that are in places of authority and power, will not relinquish it. They will not allow it to come forward. I have a personal friend of mine who has a generator that requires no input, nothing. It just absorbs energy out of the air. Yeah, it's all make-believers, Colin. I've seen it. I've touched it. It's real. But they can't go forward. They were warned. His ministry, which he's a part of a ministry, was warned. You can't go public with this. And when the government thought that they were going to go public, they raided his laboratory and stole all of his stuff. Didn't stop him. Still did it anyway. Thank God we have people like that. Now, sadly, couldn't go public with it, but with a limited exposure, I was one of the people that got to see it. I saw a circuit that, in all the training that I've had, now mind you, I was, I built my first computer in 1987, I think it was. So I was around computers all the time, around electronics. Just something that always tickled me, always intrigued me. And I also did laser printer repair. Now in laser printer repair, we have circuits that handle thousands and thousands of volts. You have to be very careful what you're doing, or you're liable to shock yourself right through the next wall. So I had been taught certain things about electricity and things that could happen, things that won't happen. Well, I witnessed firsthand, touched it, felt it, put meters on it myself, a circuit that could actually generate more electricity than it was using and store it. I watched my friend take 100 9-volt batteries, put them in series, which means you add all the voltages up. You get 100 of them at 9 volts is 900 volts. He gave me a meter, what's called a voltmeter, which tests how many volts you have. He put this circuit, he put the batteries into this circuit, had me check it before he turned it on. Came out to like 903 volts. We ran this circuit, which ran, for the life of me, I don't even know how he was able to do it. A huge motor, a fan, a couple of other things I don't recall. But things that just, a 9-volt battery is going to run that? That's just crazy. And then he went off, he said, we'll leave that running for a while. And we went off to show me some of the anti-gravity stuff that they had. So I was looking at some of the anti-gravity stuff. About 15 or 20 minutes went by. We went back. This thing is still running. To my amazement, it's still running. He turns it off. He gives me the voltmeter. He says, put the voltmeter on the batteries. Put the voltmeter on the batteries. It's like 923. It was more volts in the battery than when we started. That's impossible. Everything I've been taught, everything that all the laws of thermodynamics. No, that can't be. There's something wrong here. No, there's nothing wrong. They understand that there are things that we call electricity that they call electrons, and they can be derived in different ways by using different things. And in the result of that is you can have circuits that break the laws, if you will, of thermodynamics. You can have a circuit that literally absorbs the energy out of the air and then converts that into what we call electricity and run a wide variety of things. He started his car with this thing. It looks like, and there's videos of this, by the way. You want to see the videos, go on YouTube and look up, what would it be under on videos? It would be, I think it's under WITS, WITTS, WITS Technologies or WITS Ministries. You can see these things. He's got a couple of different generators. The one I'm talking about looks like it's about the size of a basketball cut in half. The last one he built, he mounted on a piece of wood. Looks like a joke. It doesn't make any noise. I don't remember it making any noise. You just plug stuff into it, and whatever you plug into it works. Or you take the output and plug it into your car battery and start your car if you want. Just crazy. It knows when you need what we call AC. It knows when you need DC. It knows how much voltage you need. It's just crazy. But he says that this technology has been around for over 100 years. This is probably 10 years ago. 100 years. One of the people in the ministry had this technology running in their home, and the majority of the people back then had some type of lamp of some sort. He had electricity in his house, and the lights were on 24/7. He didn't have to worry about electric bill. He was making his own. The story goes that he passed away, and because the lights were on all the time, nobody realized he passed away until like 5 or 6 days later when he started to stink. They went in there and got the body, and the lights were still on. The technology's out there. People don't realize the threat that it creates to those who are less than honorable in very powerful places. You imagine there is not a single poor person in Saudi Arabia, not a one. Every one of them lives in some kind of palace of some sort. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, I can't think of a couple of the other ones. These people are they're stinky rich. They're beyond filthy. They're stinky rich. They crap money. It's disgusting. And in the majority of it is from us because of the deals that our prior administrations have made with them. And we're going to buy your oil, and in turn for us buying your oil, you're going to buy our stocks or our bonds. I don't remember. I think it's our bonds. It's garbage. See, our oil right now is, just use simple terms. Our oil right now is $1 a gallon. It's going to come out to $1 a gallon. You want us to buy your stocks and bonds? Okay, now the oil is like $7 a gallon. So that difference in prices for us to pay for your stocks or your bonds or whatever it was that they wanted. So they're still ripping us off. Oh, well, we're buying your stuff. Yeah, you're buying the stuff by raising the prices. And then people like Stanley Meyer comes along and discovers a way to take water and turn it into fuel, and you kill the man. I still believe the biggest mistake was going to the government because he didn't realize how much money the government makes off of oil. If you listen to any of these people that talk, they'll talk about an oil economy. Everything's based on oil. It's disgusting. We have so many products that are made from oil, whether it's clothing, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's whatever, cars, plastics, all kinds of stuff made from oil. The sad part is when we're looking at things that are disposable, plastic bags, plastic packaging, things of that sort that are made out of petroleum oil, they don't break down in the environment very easily. It takes them a very, very, very long time. Some cases, hundreds of years. So what happens is they break down into microplastics, but they never break down. They're there, they just don't see them. And they don't need to use that to make those. There are alternatives to that. You could use hemp-based oils to do anything pharmaceutical oils are doing with regard to plastics and things of that nature. I don't know about probably pharmaceuticals as well. But they don't do that because there's more money in oil. It's beyond me how some of these industries don't make sense. Hemp, what people call marijuana, there's two versions of, quote, marijuana. Marijuana is really not the name. It's called cannabis. But anyway, there's two versions. There's the hemp version, and then there's the high-tech version. What am I saying? The high, I can't think of the right word, octane, the high-octane stuff. Okay, so the hemp, which years back people used to grow and make rope out of, one of the best kind of ropes you can have is hemp rope. So hemp has been legalized. It's legal to have hemp, and it can be used in a variety of ways. One of the ways it can be used is to make paper. It takes hemp, depending upon which hemp, it takes anywhere from as little as 8 weeks to sometimes as much as 10 or 12, maybe even 16 weeks on tops to completely mature to the point where it can be harvested. It takes trees years and years and years. So why don't these paper manufacturers convert to hemp? The same place that they're growing their trees in, they could grow hemp in and probably at least quadruple their output and not have to go through all the strenuous things that they have to go through with logs, these huge logs. I don't know if you've ever seen some of these things. I lived near a paper plant for some time when I was in the service. I was stationed near a paper plant. They got these trucks coming and going with these huge logs on them, back and forth, back and forth. Don't have to worry about that. Your harvesting would be so much easier, but no, they don't do that. It's common sense. No, don't want common sense. That's what I say to people. I was asked by one of my grandchildren, what is the best advice you could give me? I said, the best thing I can tell you is question everything. Everything. With respect. Be respectful. Don't be a smartass, but question. Honestly question. Don't be afraid to question. I think if people, prior to getting this crazy thing that got jabbed in your arm, were to question, hey, listen, by the way, this pandemic, this virus, this thing, what's the recovery rate if I don't do anything? How many would have done what they've done if they were told, oh, by the way, there's a, generally speaking, well over 99% recovery rate without the intervention of any medical assistance of any kind? How many people? But there was no informed consent. There was no information given out. And as a result, people have suffered tremendously. My friend Michael, who runs, he's a partner, he's the president of the station. He suffered tremendously from this thing and still suffering to this day. They've categorized him as long COVID. What I found out from doing some reading and researching and listening to other doctors, it's just remnants of the spike protein that his body doesn't know what to do with. And so it responds to it in different ways. Instead of, getting rid of it, it reacts to it. It's shameful what they have done to us. Shameful, but I don't see anybody being held responsible. If you and I were to do anything like that, we would be so far behind bars, we would never see sunlight again. It would be done. It would be over. Our lives would be completely ruined. And yet, what we're seeing today is pretty much the same of everything that was happening prior to this new administration, other than the outright treason being committed in our face. I appreciate getting rid of the people who don't belong here. I thank you for that. But if that's the only glass we can polish, America first. But it doesn't seem like America first. It seems like America is like maybe third. It's Israel first. And then we have Ukraine. They're probably in there somewhere between second. Them and a couple of the other countries that we continue to give money to. And then comes America. Our infrastructure is horrible shape. Horrible. Our electrical infrastructure. How many have you heard about, oh, it's coming, right? How many have you heard that? They're telling you that for a reason. It's coming. At some point, this grid is going to fail on us. The idea that we have, was it 500? I think it was $500 billion. I'm almost certain it's $1 billion. $500 billion. I don't know over how many years coming up to be invested in artificial intelligence. Well, these computers that run this artificial intelligence, they're scavengers for electricity. They suck up the electricity like a sponge sucks up water. So they're going to have to come up with some pretty good ideas on how they're going to be able to generate a heck of a lot of electricity to run these things. The grid presently is under stress. Anything that comes along, I'm in an area now where I have to kind of watch the weather almost every day, which is something I'm not used to. Living in Florida, you say, okay, it's going to be another, I know it's going to be tomorrow. The only thing you have to worry about is, the thunder showers. Well, I'm up in the Northeast now, and we have snow, sometimes heavy snow. And then the sad part is the snow begins to melt. We get the warmer temperature, snow begins to melt, and then the temperature drops again. Now there's not snow anymore. Now we got ice. So I check the weather quite a bit. We're supposed to have there's reports of possible blizzard warnings coming out. One of the worst storms we've had in over 10 years in certain areas. Fortunately, where I'm at, it's not bad. We've had some snow, we've had some wind, but nothing, really life-threatening per se. But if these people are right, and there are blizzards happening in these areas, I think they called out in Illinois, one of them, some other areas, they're going to lose electricity. How many people are prepared for that? What happens when the day comes when the entire grid goes down? What's going to happen to people who aren't prepared? We're prepared. I have a generator that will take care of pretty much everything. And then we have inverters. An inverter is something that takes your car voltage and converts it to your house voltage. And we have several of them. So if we have to, we have several 5-gallon containers of fuel. We fill the car up. On idle, the car hardly uses any fuel. Hook the converter to it, and you've got couple of the converters we got are 3,000 watts. You can run quite a few things. We're prepared. We have water on the side. We have dry food in case we goes for a couple of days and something happens, you can't make it to the store, whatever. But I wonder how many other people are. And I see reports where they're saying you should be 3 months. There's going to be 10 days of darkness. They're going to 3 days of darkness, and then there's going to be 10 days of exposure. They're going to be 24/7 on the television and on the emergency broadcast systems, telling people to tune in on particular channels so they can, or just tune in on TV, because I guess it's on every channel. Tune in for the story that's going on, and they're going to reveal everything and everything. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. I've heard that. Oh my God. There's another one. Doesn't come to mind right away. That all these things are, Nasara Jasara, that's what it is. And we're going to get all this money, and all the money that's been stolen from us is going to come back, and blah, 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 blah. When it's in my bank account and it's real money, then I'll believe it. Other than that, no, not happening. I go back to what I was saying earlier. Where are the real arrests? Why aren't we arresting the real criminals? Donald Trump has built skyscrapers. Donald Trump knows what the Twin Towers were made of, and number 7 as well, building number 7. Donald Trump knows for a fact that aircraft could not bring those buildings down. There had to be demolitions installed in those buildings. That is not something that you can do right away. It takes time. And it has to be put in specific situations where the building comes down without falling at an angle or something of that nature and destroying other buildings around it. Building number 7 is the absolute example of a controlled demolition. Donald Trump knows. Why aren't we arresting the real criminals? Because the real criminals were people who are in very high places of our government. They say that we lost 2,800 people that day, almost 3,000 people dead that day. Isn't it worth a real investigation? The investigation they did was a kindergarten could do better than that. But they don't want the truth coming out. This is one of my peeves. I expected to see this. As a matter of fact, I recall Donald Trump. Now, I think it was on his first go-around when he was running for president. You want to know who knocked those buildings down? I'll tell you who knocked those buildings down when I get to be president. That's what I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. You want to know who did it? Or not? You want to know? Yeah. You want to know who knocked those buildings down, or what knocked those buildings down? One of the two, I don't recall. Never heard another word about it ever again. We will continue to suffer until the truth comes forward. From that time, we have had legislation that has been introduced to gradually rip us and strip us of our rights. The Patriot Act. Oh, that sounds so patriotic, doesn't it? Patriot Act. Look into the Patriot Act and see how many of our God-given rights, these people get together, sign a piece of paper and say, now you got to do what we told you. Instead of us getting together and saying, hey, what are you doing with our money? We want an accounting for every penny that you're spending with our, no, we can't do that. And even the people in our government that try to do that can't do that. The system's a mess. I said earlier, I'm grateful for a president who is getting rid of the garbage that we don't need in this country right now. We got too many problems. Thank you. I'm grateful that you were able to bring peace to I don't know how many places. He claims 8, but I don't know how much of that is actually holding. But I'm grateful that you consider that. But I'm not grateful that we're looking at America not being the first. Because if America was first, we would start putting all of the money that you're saying is coming in from the tariffs back into America. Feed it back to the citizens. Let us have the advantage of what you're doing. Instead, what I'm seeing is very little price changes, very little. Some prices actually gone up. Someone telling me that, oh, but the inflation rate is under control. It's lower now than it was in the previous 4 years. Okay. You know, that's like pissing on me and then telling me it's raining. So there are some things I'm very grateful for. I'm generally overall, I thank God. Thank God that it's Donald Trump that is president. Because if it were the other way around, we wouldn't be here today. I'm telling you, we would already be in a major war, probably a major world war. That would have already happened. So I'm grateful for that. I recognize that. But I guess maybe I set the bar too high. I mean, we had a lowlife that was a president prior to Biden, a real lowlife who brought more division to this country than anybody else who was supposed to bring us together. Yes, we can. Yeah, he did all right. So maybe I set my bar too high. I expected when he became president, which is his bar is much higher. Don't misunderstand me. But maybe I set it a little too high. I expected to see the real criminals get locked up. I talk to people offline, and off the air, and they tell me, "Oh, you don't have to worry about that. So and so was executed in 2020, 2019." My answer to that is, let's just say one of them was Hillary Clinton. I think it was Hillary was in 2019, supposedly, allegedly hung. Okay. Let's just say that's true for a moment, which I doubt it. But let's just, for argument's sake, let's just say it's true. Of what value did that bring? We still got a Hillary Clinton that's just as evil as the one that you're saying was hung. So what value did it bring? Oh, well, we have to do that. Otherwise, the public would go crazy. What are you talking about? The public would go crazy. We have had so much crap flashed at us. What is going to make you go crazy? That they executed Hillary Clinton? You think people are going to go, oh my God, we're going to go out and like they did with George? I guess, maybe not. I think twice about it, maybe. Well, we don't deserve the truth. If that's really what happened, then let's just say that happened. Then get rid of the extra, get rid of the number 2. It doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, well, we're going to kill the devil, but we've got the copy of him over here. We don't want to freak people out. We're going to hang him, but we're still going to have him over here. Make sense to you? Doesn't make sense to me. So I go back to the question, why are these people still walking around free? We have, in some cases, what has been determined as actually terminology as indisputable evidence. That tells me that there's evidence that there's no question, nothing, 100% done. Yet the individual is still walking around free. Trying to make a speech the other day, they turned him down. Why? So, like I said, maybe I set my bar too high, but this is what I was expecting. I truly expected that all funds going to Ukraine would stop. Done. He said he was going to stop the war in a day. I never believed that. I took that as a symbol of I'll stop the war very quickly. But that was his way of emphasizing what he was going to do. Well, it's been a lot more than a day, and gosh, almost a year at this point, but we're still supporting them. What would happen if we stopped giving them money? I found out a while back, this is probably a couple of years ago now, found out that the money that we were giving them was also, they were paying the government. Our tax dollars were going to Ukraine to pay for the Ukrainian government. And that continues to this day. Now, I don't know if it's still going to the government. I don't know how much they're getting. I know it's in the billions. But people don't have an idea how big a billion is. If I wanted to give you $1 billion at the rate of $1 per second, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, every second, neither one of us would be asleep. Just constantly $1. It would take me 32,000 years to give you $1 billion. 32,000 years to reach $1 billion. At $1 per second, per day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, it would take 32,000 years That's how big that number is. And we're still giving it by the multitudes to people we know who are corrupt. I can't go along with that. I can't agree to that. That's not what I wanted. That's not what I voted for. And I think it's important that we voice out what we're disgruntled about. We can't just sit back and be quiet. Being, as a matter of fact, there's a term that silence is consent. You don't have my consent, pal. I'm not consenting to that. I don't consent to this idea that you're going to turn Gaza into some kind of paradise. What happens to the people that were originally there? They're not going to be able to afford to live there. Where do they go? They're disposable, I guess, because that's what it looks like to the rest of the world as Israel continues to commit genocide on these poor people. 80% of the people who are murdered, 80% are civilian. You can't tell me you're defending yourself. That's a blatant lie. The sad truth is it's been going on for a long time. Many, many, many years. It's taken this long to be able to get to the point where people are saying, hey, wait a minute, something's not right. If you look up the international laws that have been set upon Israel, that Israel has broken, there are numerous over the years, numerous laws. Whatever the Germans did to the Jews, these people that call themselves Jews are doing to the Palestinians times 100. Times 100. It's terrible. There are actual video reports of children going to get food and being shot in the head. Oh, but we're defending ourselves. And you can't question them. This is one of the things I disagree with this administration. They're over there kissing their behind. I didn't vote for that. I didn't vote for Israel. And I really hope and pray that somebody will come up and say, no more dual citizens in our government. I heard that they're working on legislation, maybe, that anybody in the government, federal government, you have to be an American-born citizen. You can't be a naturalized citizen. Okay. But that being the case, you can't be a dual citizen. Either you're 100% American or you're out of the government. You can be as many citizenships as you want. But if you're going to be in our government, the federal government, you are 100% American. Therefore, you are 100% American citizen. You're not 50% American, 50% Israeli, or any other for that matter. 100. We need to get back to basics. We need to get back to common sense. How can these people who are supposedly our representatives, truly our representatives, when they carry a dual citizenship? How many of you out there are dual citizens? Think about that for a second. How can they truly be our representative? They're not. And their allegiance, sadly, is to another country. It's evident in the way that we're being treated. It's evident in the way that the money keeps flowing to these people as they blatantly, in the open, in the eyes of the world, commit genocide and murder children, right, left, and center. Children, women, men, doesn't matter. We need to get rid of them all. They're all, what do they call them? I can't think of the word. They have a word for them. Goyle or something like that. In other words, they're all just trash. They're not human beings. They're just garbage. And we need to sweep them out so we can move in and make more money. I'm not happy about that deal. All right, running down. I'm getting short. I got a lot of stuff happening in the background. Hopefully I can share some of it with you. But until some of it comes forward, I just got to keep my mouth shut, which is kind of hard because I'd love to share some of this with some of the listeners out there. It's some of it's good, some of it's bad, but it's life. But right now, until I can confirm some things, I just got to put it to the side. Anyway, so if you're not aware, on Thursday nights, we have the Revelation Show. I am producing that show for Peter Kling. Peter's an amazing man. He is like an encyclopedia when it comes to the ability of prophecy and then taking that prophecy and explaining it towards what's happening today. So we'll have another follow-up on Thursday. I saw something where Trump is phase 2 of the peace plan. I think it was phase 2 of some kind of peace plan. And he's bringing 10 leaders together to help support this peace plan. Well, Revelation 17:12 starts out with the enemy bringing 10 kings who are not kings together. Go read it. You'll see what I'm talking about. And you have to see this proposal that Trump is making for this, quote, peace. I appreciate the peace, but could we have a little more concentration on what's going on over here? That there's people over here suffering and little to none is happening for that. Anyway, thank you guys. I greatly appreciate it. I'll be back in a week, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, my friend used to say. Hope you guys are doing well out there. I thank you for taking the time and allowing me to share with you. Be back in a week. God bless. See you soon.